Alright, hello and welcome to another episode of Days Without Strife. As per usual with Days Without Strife, I'm going to be talking through this game as I'm playing it. So this is a video journal style video. Now, in this game, I'm playing as a Wildcard. You may not recognize this game if you haven't seen it before. I've got a couple more videos on the channel. I'm going to briefly be going over some of the mechanics, but probably not in as much detail as I have in previous videos. You don't need to know that much as this wildcard anyway. I'm playing as a wildcard called the Aeronaut. You can see his symbol up here, and when I hover over him, it highlights what on the map that I own. So I have one unit over here, one unit over here, and I've got the Hurricane, which is an airship. And it's the only airship that starts on the board. Airships are kind of expensive, factions can buy them, but they tend to not come out too early, and due to a recent patch, they're actually kind of harder to get now. You used to see people pumping out tons and tons and tons of them at the end of the game. Now people are limited in how many of them they can get out in one particular turn, so that's probably not going to be as much of a thing anymore. So right now I'm the only airship on the board, and that gives me a little bit of an advantage. Now, quick reminder, Days Without Strife is a negotiation game. It's asymmetric, and it has two types of players. You have the factions, who are the people who own territory on the board. You can see their colors here. And it has the wildcards, and they're like little independent agents who are running around trying to get paid by the factions for helping them to do certain things, right? And the factions are competing for the most renown, which is generally earned by owning territory and winning battles and stuff like that, right? And the wildcards are competing to have the most electrum at the end of the game. And electrum is a currency that is completely useless to the factions, right? But that they can generate. But for the wildcards, it's their win condition. So it's basically the factions generate it, use it to pay the wildcards, and whichever wildcard gets paid the most over the course of the game wins the game on the wildcard side of things. So I'm looking to get the most electrum. It's currently day 2, so I've basically skipped day 1 here. I wasn't around as much on that day. I was around enough to do stuff. As you can see, I've managed to get 6 electrum here, which is a pretty substantial amount for start of day 2. And there was some stuff that went on, but I wasn't really at my PC to record. I had to do it all on my laptop, and that wouldn't have been a fun video. So I will go over what happened. I think I got a screenshot of the board end state for that day 1, so hopefully you'll be able to see that here. Now, a few quick things to note here. One of the main things that the Aeronaut can sell is the abilities of his agents. And unfortunately for the Aeronaut, this is something that really scales into the end game, because at the beginning of the game, no one else has any airships, and these units are kind of useless as a result. You can see that, for example, here, the Skywright, incredibly useful agent, if people have an airship to put it on. But unfortunately for me, they don't. When on an airship that is docked at a hangar at the end of the turn, fully repair that airship. So it can basically put an airship back into action if your opponents have taken it out. I can't sell that to anyone yet because no one needs it, right? There's no airships in the air, there's no airships that's been damaged. It's just not very useful. Same goes for the Navigator. So the Navigator, chart the skies when on an airship, it travels twice as fast. Incredibly useful ability. Twice speed of an airship is amazing. Airships move in real time in this game, unlike everything else. Everything else has to wait for checkpoints to move. So airships can be a very fast way of getting from a place to another place, right? And with the Navigator, that becomes even faster. But he's not useful right now because no one has an airship to put him on. And in fact, his ability is exactly the same as my captain's ability here, the Aeronaut. When on an airship, it travels twice as fast and doesn't stack. So he's not even useful to me because I can just keep my Aeronaut on the Hurricane and go twice as fast anyway, right? So I haven't been able to sell those. Finally, the third one is more useful. So the Quartermaster, when on an airship at the start of the turn, the owner gains 1 trade good. If it's not the Hurricane, then the Aeronaut does as well. So you will see trade goods are here, right? They are a type of good that you can convert into any other resource. Now, these resources are used by the factions to buy things. They're not incredibly useful for me, specifically, right? I'm never going to be owning any of these resources because I don't use them for anything. But for the factions, they're very useful. So the factions are trying to gain these trade goods, and I can generate them, right? You will note that the Quartermaster, if he's on the Hurricane at the start of the turn, that means that I gain one trade good and no one else gains anything. If he's on a different airship, then the person who owns that airship gains a trade good and I gain a trade good, which is fantastic, right? It means I can sell the Quartermaster to someone else, put them on their ship, and that's essentially selling them one trade good because they're gaining that trade good, but then I gain that trade good as well, and I can sell that too. So I can essentially get double the money. But that requires someone else to own an airship, and no one does, so I can't sell his ability right now. Thankfully, he still gives one trade good, and I've been able to trade this with the Mistborn in, not the Mistborn, the Museborn in both phases, for 0.9 Electrum. They basically said at the start of the game, we will always buy your trade good for 0.9 Electrum if you want us to, and that's a really good deal. A trade good is ostensibly worth 1 Electrum, right? Because that's what you can transform it into. But if you sell it for 1 Electrum, then the person who's buying it isn't really getting anything more out of it except the ability to turn an Electrum into another good. Which is good, right? But quite often they'll want to undercut that and buy trade goods for cheaper. I think 0.9, especially at the start of the game, is a really good deal for it, so I'm happy to keep giving them that. I certainly wouldn't be able to charge more than 1 for a trade good at this point, I think. So 0.9 is probably the best deal I'm going to get, so happy to keep selling them that. Now, the Museborn are quite a rich faction because they own Kingsland, and Kingsland is a new type of city now to this playtest. It's a metropolis, and the metropolis allows them to generate 2 trade goods every single turn. That is incredibly powerful, which has turned this game into even more of a King of the Hill style thing, right? Kingsland was always important being in the middle of the map, but now it's even more important to own through the game instead of just at the end of it. So these guys are rich, and I want to get as much of their money as I can, right? And that's basically what I have been doing over the course of that first day. They own Kingsland in the first place, because there was, they got on board the Hurricane, and so did the Arrows, and we were going off towards Kingsland with their Aristocrat. Now, the Aristocrat is the unit that can claim a city if it's neutral, but not if there's another Aristocrat sitting in the city, right? And every faction starts with one of these Aristocrats. In fact, there's probably still one in Kingsland. Yeah, here. If this city is neutral, appoint this agent as governor and take control blocked by enemy Aristocrats. The way people used to take Kingsland in this game was by hiring the Brotherhood barrister. And you can see that the Brotherhood are a Wildcard faction. They can hire out agents. And I don't know where the barrister is right now. Is that him? No. Oh, there he is. Okay. So here, break bylaws. If a city is neutral, appoint this agent as governor and take control cannot be used on Kingsland. So notably, this isn't blocked by aristocrats. So in the past, everyone would run their aristocrats to Kingsland to try and grab it as quickly as possible, right? And everyone would be blocked by each other, because the aristocrats get blocked by other aristocrats. But the barrister doesn't get blocked by that, so you could buy the barrister, use it on Kingsland, and use that to claim the center of the map for yourself. Now, specifically, this unit cannot be used on Kingsland, so they can't use that. So the same thing happened as usual. People rushed to the middle, specifically the Masquerade and the Arrows. Both rushed to Kingsland with their aristocrats, got there at the same time, and were blocking each other. The Masquerade then hired the Brotherhood Betrayer, who is a unit, he's currently on here, who has the Tranquilizer Dart. They can exhaust an enemy agent for the turn, which prevents that agent from taking actions. So they hired that and shot the Mask Aristocrat under the assumption that that would disable the blocking ability. But the blocking ability is a passive, so it didn't work. It stopped the Arrows from being able to claim Kingsland, but it didn't stop them from blocking anyone else from claiming Kingsland. So there was still this standoff, and Kingsland was still neutral, as the Masks were just sitting there with their Aristocrat. The Masks sat there for a while, and the Museborn got their Aristocrat on the Hurricane, right? And we started heading towards Kingsland with it. And then they said, actually, okay, we can go to Jester Crest or something. We were going to pick up a mask unit so that they can talk as well. Notably, if you're on board a thing like this, right, an airship, you have access to the forum, so you're able to talk inside here. So we were going to go pick up the masks in order to get them into the conversation and essentially establish a United Nations. The United Nations was technically supposed to be in Qantas, but the people who were hosting it kept kicking people out, so no one was very happy with them, so people were starting to think maybe we should do it on board the Hurricane. But then, at one of the checkpoints, the mask aristocrat left and went to a Reedus to talk to someone, right? Thinking that because the Arrow aristocrat was exhausted, there was no threat of anyone else taking Kingsland. That was the only other aristo there. I don't think they noticed that the Museborn aristocrat was aboard my airship. So the Museborn sent me a message going, hey, turn around, we can get Kingsland now. And I was like, are you okay to pay me for that? That seems like I think I would like payment for that, because you will be getting quite a lot out of that, right? And I think I actually sold it for kind of cheap. I also sold them Zarek, I forgot about that. You can sell them control of a city that your base is in. So I sold them that for 1.1 Electrum. And then here, for Kingsland, it looks super cheap, 0.2 Electrum, but they also commended me, which is worth 1 Electrum, so I'm pretty okay on the Electrum front. I charged them 1.2 Electrum for Kingsland. That's something they were getting 2 trade goods for, so I could probably have gone higher, but I didn't want to, like, price myself out of the market on a split-second decision. If they go no, I really don't want that to happen, right? So I took them back to Kingsland, they claimed it, they were very thankful, and we set up a new United Nations there, so we were able to talk through a bunch of stuff as well. But notably, I got a bunch of money from them, right? And then towards I was trying to run a couple of other schemes to get money. I'm trying to sell my hangars, my bases, to people. And I did that by saying the very first base that gets bought is super cheap. You can buy it for 0.3, and then after that, you get it for 0.4. So for example, if the Empire over here, the Young Empire, wanted an Aeronaut base in Iron Spear, they could buy that for 0.3 as long as no one else had bought an Aeronaut base. If they were getting the second one, they would have to spend 4.0 for it. Which is an absurd amount that I'm not expecting anyone to buy, but it was supposed to create pressure on, let's buy the first one, because there's only really one available for sale. No one's going to be able to pay 4 for the second one, right? Unfortunately, none of the factions really understood this, because for every other wildcard in the game, pretty much, it's very beneficial to that wildcard to have a bunch of bases on the map. So the factions tend to charge the wildcards for building bases in their lands. They tend to say, okay, you know what, Brotherhood, you can build a bunch of bases over here, which is exactly what's happened with the masks here, right? But in return, you have to give us control of one of your units for a phase, something like that. So the factions are used to doing that. With the Aeronaut bases, the Aeronaut base is just advantageous for the people in the area of the base, for the faction in the area of the base. The Aeronaut doesn't need it, right? Because the only thing it does is that if the Skywrite ends there on an airship, they repair that airship. And so if you are, for example, the Young Empire up here, you have an airship that's been shot, you're not going to be able to drag that all the way over to Zarek to repair, right? And even if you could, then it wouldn't have time to get back to where it needed to be on the next turn. So it might be advantageous to you to build a Aeronaut hangar over here so that you have the opportunity to repair your airships, or to buy the Skywrite off me so you can repair your airships in the near future. Unfortunately, none of the factions really feel like they should be buying a base off of a wildcard at this point. And I think it's also fair because they don't have any airships right now, right? And there's nothing to prevent me from repairing someone else's airship at their base, which was, I think, the biggest issue that some of these powers had with it. So I didn't manage to sell any of those. I also tried to offer the Quartermaster and the Skywrite saying, hey, if anyone gets an airship up this turn, I'd be willing to offer a massive discount on buying these units, but no one did. Steel's just too valuable this early in the game. People are building improvements, fortifications like things that help them get more resources going forward, rather than airships, which are just a flat military thing. People don't want to commit too hard to the military front this early. So, there were really just two more things that happened, right? The first is that the masks wanted to talk to me, and I had been going to pick one of them up, and then turned around and went back to Kingsland, right, to drop the Museborn off. The masks then decided, okay, well, if he's not coming over here, I guess I'd better use my unit that's already in Kingsland to jump aboard this ship. At this point, their only unit in Kingsland, because the aristocrat had moved over to Aridus, right, was the Brotherhood Betrayer that they'd hired from the Brotherhood to shoot this guy, to shoot the Arrows aristocrat at the start of the previous turn. So they hop on board with the Brotherhood Betrayer, and they discover something. I mean, they probably knew that this was a possibility, but I see that Betrayer hop on board, and I'm like, that is a wildcard unit. It's not... It belongs to the masks right now, but at the end of every turn, the Brotherhood reclaims control of all of their units and is able to sell them again. The Brotherhood are in direct competition with me, right? You can see they are a wildcard. They are selling people, they are selling their services for Electrum. I need to beat them on the Electrum front. So it's very much in my interest to make sure that that Brotherhood unit is not able to be sold on this turn. So, the Hurricane has a thing called the Brig, and if you have your Aeronaut on your ship, one of his abilities is to the Brig. If you're on the Hurricane, arrest a follower. Now, follower is notable. It means you cannot arrest the unit that corresponds to a player's leader. So, for example, my leader is the Aeronaut. We can't have the speaker, or the planner, for example, that corresponds to a person as well, but the veteran would be fine to arrest because that's a secondary, that's a follower, right, that they've hired. So I wouldn't be able to arrest the boss, the Brotherhood boss who leads the Brotherhood, that was that guy who shows up in Kingsland, but I would be able to arrest any of his followers. So when the masks jump on board the Hurricane with the Betrayer, I immediately arrest the Betrayer. Now, I didn't know this, it actually stops them from being able to talk in the forum as well, so they were a bit annoyed that they jumped on board the ship to try and talk to me, and I instantly threw them in jail and refused to talk to them. But I sent them a message just to say, hey, no hard feelings, look, I heard the Betrayer cost quite a lot of money, I don't want him to be able to be sold, so I'm just throwing him in the Brig. And that is where he has stayed since. I had an interesting conversation with the Brotherhood, where we agreed that we would try and sell this unit together on this turn. So I would take half the price, and he would take half the price, and then I'd be, like, paid to free that unit, right? And the Brotherhood gets him back. I think that's a good deal for me, because ultimately I'm trying to beat all the wildcards, not just the Brotherhood, so pulling the Brotherhood back by stopping them from selling this guy is fine, it's good for me, but getting Electrum out of this deal is better for me, because that moves me further ahead of everyone else, right? So I've put him on the market for 0.7 Electrum to me, 0.7 Electrum to the Brotherhood, which is frankly an insane amount of Electrum to be paying for the Betrayer at this point, unless you really need him. So it's possible no one will buy him, but that offer should be open forever, right? As long as I get someone to pay that at some point, I'll have made some money out of this. So I don't really care whether that goes through right now or not. Finally, so we were approaching the end of the turn, and that's basically everything I had done, money-wise. The Hurricane has a couple of other abilities. They're the same abilities any airship has. You can shoot at a city, you can shoot at another airship, you can issue support, well, you automatically give support to allied units within the radius around it that you can see right now. That helps them militarily, right? And those are the three abilities that it has. The fourth hardpoint is just the engine, which allows it to move. But now, for most airships, they have to choose one of those first two per turn. They can either shoot as an airship, or they can shoot at a city. The Hurricane is special in that it can do both. It can shoot as an airship and a city on the same turn. Unfortunately, no one else has an airship, so I can't sell that ability yet, but I could sell the shoot at a city ability. I knew that everyone was being kind of cautious about declaring war on anyone else at this early stage, So I wasn't sure how I was going to get people to actually pay for that ability. It's incredibly strong. It takes out 7 units from the city's defense, right? Or from the offense of an army that's going to attack you, potentially. But it's not something that most people wanted to do because everyone's trying to stay friendly with each other. So I went ahead and said, I'll offer it at a massive discount. I'm gonna say you only have to pay me 0.6 to buy this, which is frankly an insane deal for taking 7 units off the board, right? Now, no one wanted it initially. And then the Mistborn, I think they're like, oh, I can't remember which player it was. It was one of them. I think the Mistborn speaker was maybe a little bit paranoid that I might be shooting at them. And so they went, would it be possible to buy your shot for 0.6, but specifically say that you randomize it and don't include us? That's all it would be for. And they were saying this in public. They were making it very clear they didn't want to be the person determining where my shot went. They didn't want to get on anyone's bad side, right? But they were also didn't want me to shoot at them, so they were offering me the money I had asked for in order to not shoot at them. I said, yes, absolutely, I'll take that deal if you're offering it. And then they went, yeah, okay, I'll go and talk to my team about it. And we were getting towards the final checkpoint in the turn, and so I really needed to know where I was going. Like, am I going to go and shoot at this? Because if I leave it a little bit longer, I won't be able to get to the places that I can shoot at. And I was thinking, well, maybe Museborn are just trying to run out the clock here, because if they don't give me an answer within like half an hour, I won't be able to make it to any of their cities. And then they have essentially just not paid me, and they've still gotten away with the same service, right? Not being shot at. So I sent them an interesting little DM here. You can see here, received offer to shoot at Nox. You offered first for the same price, so if you want it to go elsewhere, you have first dibs. If not, no worries, and I hope no hard feelings. Please accept before 50 minutes to checkpoint if accepting. So, in the same way a lot of scammers do, right? I'm putting them on the clock as hard as possible and going, look, I'm gonna shoot at you if you don't pay me here. And Nox is this city down here, very important city for them, especially on the first turn. They don't want to lose those units and not be able to cover to like go and invade the neutral cities adjacent. They also don't want to lose those units and not have enough units to maintain control of the cities they've gotten control of, right? So I put them on the clock with this, and I go, you know, someone sent me an offer to shoot at your city. You can pay me first to stop this from happening, but you do have to pay me, and you have to pay me very soon. And they panicked, and they accepted the deal. And that's exactly what I wanted, right? No one had sent me an offer to shoot at Nox, but I needed to get them to send me that 6.6 Electrum because it was very possible no one was going to pay me. So at that point, I was asked to randomize who I was shooting at. Again, it was very public that Museborn had paid me. They were making it very obvious, and they wanted it very, very clear that they weren't the person deciding where the shot would go, so that it's me who's like on the receiving end of the bad feelings and not them. So I randomized it in inverted commas. I was tempted to go for the masks because I'd annoyed the masks anyway by arresting their betrayer on the Hurricane and refusing to speak to them, essentially. But I thought that might be a bit too obvious that it's not random, so I just went for Planet Forge, because these guys had not been talking to me very much. They kept kicking me out of the forum in Qantas so that they could talk to people without me seeing it. And that was just annoying me, so I decided to go and take the pot shot at Planet Forge, and I made it very clear, you know, hey, I've randomized this, I'm going for Planet Forge. And then Muse went and said in public, I don't mind if you get a second payment from them to not choose at Planet Forge. I'm like, well, what? Okay, well, that's amazing. You've just paid me to go and shoot at a place, and then you're saying that you're fine if the other people pay me to not shoot at that place as well. I get the double, that's like the dream for the Wildcard, right? You get the double payment for doing a thing, and both sides are fine with it. And so I went and offered Patrol, hey, look, here, I was paid to randomize the shot, it's landed on Planet Forge, but Muse said I could sell you the option to call it off. I'm gonna sell this for super cheap, because I don't want to make enemies here. But I do need to receive payment, otherwise Muse won't be particularly happy with me, right? So I offered them 0.3 Electrum to not lose 7 of their units, which again I think is an incredible deal. Maybe they didn't trust that it was true, I'm not sure, but they never responded, so I eventually cancelled the deal and shot them, and that was the end of the turn. I managed to make the +6 off of Museborn that way. Sadly not the +9. There was one other thing, which was that the Empire had asked me if I could go up and shoot the Renegade force in Siren Song. The Renegade is another wildcard who can raise forces in empty cities and attack places, and can be insanely problematic for the for the factions, especially early on, because they're very, very strong armies. You can see that the Masquerades have recovered a little bit here because they've managed to get the cities that the Brotherhood were in, again, by commending the Brotherhood, right? But they were wiped out down to just Mystara and Ziessa after last turn because they got attacked hard by the Renegade. You can see that in this screenshot, that the Renegade has the units in position to attack them, and they did indeed attack. So, Young Empire had asked, hey, can you come up and attack Siren Song? They asked that after Muse had already paid me, and I was like, oh, well, okay, you know what, since Muse offered me the ability to get Patol to pay their way out of being attacked, right? I can go to Young Empire and say, hey, if you pay Patol's ransom, then yes, I can do that. If you're the ones to pay for Patol not to be attacked, these guys are the Ptolemites, or whatever the Ptolemians, then I can go and attack Siren Song for you. And so I sent that offer to them, and they went, actually, no, we're incredibly happy that you're attacking Planet Forge. We hadn't noticed that when we sent our offer, so please just go and attack Planet Forge. And that was like, oh, well, I wish I'd chosen somewhere else. I wish I'd chosen, like, Velok or Iron Spear, because I bet they would have paid the ransom, essentially. So I only got the 0.6 out of the shot that turn, but it was still pretty good, right? I think that's a good result. And then we go into turn 2. The main thing is that the Betrayer is still on board the Hurricane. He's still under arrest, so he can be sold by the Brotherhood, but he would stay under arrest, and that means he's useless to whoever buys him. So maybe the Brotherhood will sell him at a massive discount. What I did offer the Brotherhood is we both, get 50% of the money that is being paid for this. I mentioned that earlier, right? And at the moment, I've offered 0.7 per person. 1.4 is a lot to pay this early, so I don't think it will happen, but he is there, and he is up for sale if people want to get him. You can see the Ptolemians asked about it, and I have sent them the cost, and they haven't responded, so I think they went under that and went, are you kidding me? That's insane. But this is a character who can be very useful in a very specific circumstance, right? If you need a specific character assassinated. So I wouldn't be surprised if it does sell at some point for that price. The other thing that's happened this turn is the Young Empire reached out to me very early here and said, what's the cost for blasting Mystara? Mystara is this city right here that belongs to these guys, the Masquerade. They had a huge force there, right? They had 11 units because they only had these 2 cities at the end of that turn, so they had to split their units between those cities. And clearly Young Empire either want to invade it, or they were really worried about it coming for them. So they wanted that shot. I went and said, you know what, I'll sell it to you for 1.3. I was thinking that's quite a high, like, it's definitely worth it, but it's quite a high bar for day 2, because again, day 2 can be a day where people hang back and don't attack things as much. So I wasn't sure whether they would accept it. I wanted to leave it on the table until I got some counter offers and stuff like that, right, later in the phase, and just have given them a baseline that they could pay at some point if they do want that, but that I could lower if I don't get any other offers. And they came back with the counter offer saying, hey, we'll give you 1 Electrum instead of 1.3 and a base in our territory. I was like, how do I answer this politely? Because a base is something I want to sell. It's worth stuff to the person I'm giving. So they're asking for a 0.3 discount and for me to give them something that I previously valued as 0.3 as well, right? So essentially 0.6 discount. But they don't understand that because they think the base is good for me. So I'm like, no, right? Not looking to sell base right now was the most polite I could make it. And then they decided, hey, please shoot. Stay at the Mystara for the day. And I looked at this and went, okay, fine. I'd asked for them to throw in an alliance so that I can't be denounced, right? If I'm allied to a faction, the denouncement doesn't work, and the denouncement will otherwise destroy a bunch of my hard points on the ship, which would be pretty crippling. I thought the denouncement might be possible if the masks were really annoyed at me for shooting them, after also arresting their guy on the previous turn. But clearly, that with stay at Mystara for the day, they are trying to get a little bit extra out of this deal, because that would mean that this radius is over Mystara, right? The radius around my ship. And if you remember correctly, that provides one support to allied forces, which means, given that I'm allied to the Empire, if they march into Mystara, they will receive one support from my ship. And that's something I really wanted to sell separately. So they sent a follow-up message saying shoot right before combat, right? And basically immediately as they sent that, I was like, I gotta make a decision here. I don't want to have to stay at Mystara for the entire day with my ship. That takes away so much agency from me, right? But I also don't want to annoy them, and I'm pretty happy with this deal. So I shot instantly and told them, oh, hang on, sorry, I shot before I saw your message. And that means the shot has now been carried out, right? I've done what they asked me to. I don't have to stay near Mystara anymore. I can go and do other things. And if they say, hey, no, we need you to stay near Mystara for the support, I can say, oh, sorry, that wasn't included in the deal. I can do that, but you'll need to pay me a little bit more. So that's the hope, that I can get a bit more money out of it. Anyway, I think it's been a fantastic start. 6.0 Electrum by the start of day 2 is kind of incredible, right? And we'll see how things go from here. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, it is now day 3 of Days Without Strife. You can see the day has just started. There has not been a first checkpoint yet. Checkpoint is in 43 minutes, so the phase started about an hour and 20 minutes ago. Yesterday was simultaneously interesting and not very interesting at all. You got the interesting part at the very beginning, right? The Young Empire paid me to shoot at Mystara. You will note that Mystara has now flipped to being Young Empire's. Young Empire did indeed attack it and take it. Now, obviously the masks weren't too happy that I shot at Mystara, but it is what it is. I got paid for it, and I made it very clear to them that I'd been paid for that just quite a lot, and I couldn't really turn that down. Right. Then I spent a lot of the rest of the phase trying to see if I could find any ways to get other sources of income. Now, a lot of my ways of getting money were still not available to me. No one else had airships yet. Right, so my quartermaster, not useful, my navigator, not useful, my skywrite, not useful, my airship cannon, not useful. It's only really the ground cannon that helps. And there's a couple of other things, of course. My ship can provide support to an attacker within that radius. And that's the thing that the Young Empire were trying to get out of me for free, basically, over Mystara, by asking me to stay there until the end of the phase and fire at the last second. I did not want to throw that in with the deal, so I of course shot instantly, and then eventually started moving away, at which point they sent me a message saying, hey, you're not going to stay there. And I sent them a message back saying, trying to say as politely as possible, you haven't paid for that, right? My understanding was that 1.3 was for the shot. I've not been paid to support. I'm potentially being paid for the quartermaster on the other side of the map, so I need to get them there. I don't think I have time to get back. Now, this is the important thing. I'm potentially being paid for the quartermaster. This was something that came up a bit later in the phase, where the masks reached out to me first to offer to pay for an airbase, which is fantastic. I managed to sell one. 0.3 Electrum, it's not very much, but I did manage to get an airbase there. And that in turn meant that as long as they have a governor here, we can have a forum. So you can see that we've been talking plenty in this forum between one another. And they were saying they want to get an airship in the air, therefore they can buy the quartermaster. How much would I sell them for? And I was debating what to say, because of course, the Quartermaster is really powerful, they give the trade good, right? But I can't really sell them at a super high price, because I don't want to discourage them from building that airship in the first place, especially if the only reason they're going to do it is to get my abilities. So I offered to sell him for super cheap on the first day, 0.4 Electrum, and then potentially more on days beyond that. And they were really happy with that. They said, yes, we'll give you 0.4 Electrum for the Quartermaster, just bring him over to Zycer, which is of course on the other side of the map, and we'll pay you for him when we build the airship. And that's fantastic. I start heading over that way. That's when I got the Young Empire message saying, hey, please stay where you are. And I told them, sorry, no can do, and they seemed pretty understanding of that. Now, on the way over, I had a unit in Kingsland. The UN had been relocated to Bearhearth without me noticing. Well, I did notice, but I wasn't informed at any point. So by the time I got to the table and started, moving my units around and whatnot, unfortunately there was a highwayman route basically everywhere outside of Kingsland, which meant if I sent an agent down that route, I'd be giving 0.2, I think it's 0.2 Electrum to the highwayman. And I don't want to do that. The highwayman is my competition, and I need Electrum myself. So there was no way I was sending, I think it was my navigator who was sitting in Kingsland. There was no way I was sending him along that route to Bearhearth. So I sent my airship over, figured I'll pick him up at Kingsland, I'll drop him off at Bearhearth, and then I'll go on over to Zycer. Did the first part of that, picked him up at Kingsland. The Brotherhood boss hopped on the airship and started talking to me saying, hey, is there any way we can negotiate you letting the betrayer out? And they actually said, look, I've got an offer to buy him for 0.3 from me. They'll pay you 0.3 as well, and then you let him off the airship. I'm like, 0.3 is not worth it for me. I feel like I can get a lot more money than that for releasing him later, right? So I stuck at my offer that I made earlier in the phase, which was basically 0.7 to let him out. Anyone can pay me 0.7 and I'll let him out. And that's what I'm sticking with. The boss was not very happy with me. But, it was what it was. I did not say anything more. And then when I was getting close to Bearhearth, I suddenly got a message from the Masquerade saying, be careful, don't dock at Bearhearth. If you go there, Brotherhood have basically just made a pact with the Arrows that they'll give them the Betrayer for free if the Arrows free the Betrayer. So the way that works is a character can have Thieves' Tools. In fact, the Brotherhood Betrayer has these tools. He just can't use them because he's currently exhausted, right? Thieves' Tools allow you to free a different agent that has been arrested. So the Arrows were going to put those Thieves' Tools on a character, hop into the ship, and then free the Brotherhood Betrayer, and then hop back out again before I could arrest them. Now, that's a case of micro. If I was online and watching, I could nab their whatever diplomatic agent they sent up and put them under arrest as well before they managed to do that. But I don't think I could reliably do that, especially considering they'd be choosing when they hop on the airship, right? So the Mask told me just to avoid Bearhearth. I did. I started going the other way, and then I got a message from the Arrows saying, hey, we'd like to consider hiring your navigator or your quartermaster. How much would that cost? I was like, oh, well, that's great. People are getting airships in the air. That's awesome. So I messaged back to say, hey, it will be, I don't know, like 0.7 or something. I don't remember exactly what I said. And then they said, come to Bearhearth so we can discuss the price. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here, right? So I sent them a message back saying, sorry, I'm not going to Bearhearth. I've been tipped off that your agent will free the Betrayer if I do that, right? So here, oh, it was air support that they were trying to buy, not the Quartermaster, never mind. Here, 0.6E, if it's near where I was going anyway, they said they would hop on board, so they wanted me to go to that location, and I said no. And then I said, hey, look, I'm always willing to free the Betrayer if someone pays me 0.7 Electrum, right? And the Brotherhood have said you might be willing to do that. That's the price of it. And then they go, we're broke. So clearly they were never planning to buy air support or anything like that, right? They didn't have any money to do that with. So I started sending my ship this way. The Brotherhood boss got very angry at me and started going, look, you better let this guy out for 0.3 or else I'm literally just going to get all the... I've had so many offers from factions to free my guy for free, basically, if I give them the Betrayer, and then you'll get nothing out of it. So why are you not taking my offer right now of 0.3? I'm just like, I really think I can do better than that, right? And it doesn't really advance... It's a one-time payment for me anyway. It doesn't make a difference to me if it's now or if it's like 2 days in the future. I may as well keep my price exactly the same. And yeah, boss was not happy with that. We headed up this direction. The Arrow's envoy on the final checkpoint moved to Rhinestone to try and like intercept the ship if I'd sent it directly, but I was careful with how I pathed it so that it wouldn't dock there. It was quite funny to watch. It's like a guy running behind the airship going, hey, let me on, let me on. Right. I eventually got over here to Zysa or whatever it's called. So yeah, that was that. I'm actually wondering whether I should have taken the 0.3 because the fact that I'm having to keep this guy away from people who could possibly free him is making my ship journeys really quite awkward, right? You're seeing I'm having to avoid the populated cities that have agents in. In order to make sure no one jumps on board and frees him. And maybe that's not worth the amount of money that I'm trying to charge, but I reckon if I control this character at some point when there's actually battles going on and stuff, the Betrayer is so good. Tranquilizer darting is so fantastic for like taking out a military leader who could invade you or taking out someone who could do something like really quite good, right? But mainly for military leaders, to be honest. It can, like, completely stop an army's advance if there's only one military leader in a place. So, for example, the commander here, and they were attacking Qantas, then going in and tranquilizing that military leader will stop the attack completely. If we get to a point where that's something that people want, I think I might be able to even get more than 0.7 out of it. And I think the Brotherhood would be able to as well, although obviously they want to sell him on the days before that, so they're pressuring me to try and get it quickly. Anyway, we went to Zysa, we parked up at Zysa, and then the poor old Masks messaged me to say, hey, we used our city action to try and build an airship, and at this point I need to make it very clear this is an alpha build of the game. It's still being playtested, so there are bugs, and airship creation is something that changed very recently. Hence why people aren't creating as many airships in this playtest. It essentially takes the place of your city action, so you can't do other stuff that you would want to do, right? And that's not seemed worth it for a lot of people. So they actually used their city action on it. It didn't spend the money, but it used up their city action and it didn't create an airship. And they were like, it bugged out. We've messaged the developer, but the developer said he needs to fix it overnight, right? There's nothing he can do to help us with that right now. So we'll see if we have a new airship by the morning. We'll still need to hire your quartermaster, right? And you're over here now, so we will keep that offer in. But, you know, we need to wait to see if we actually get that airship or not. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like, there's there's nothing you can really do about bugs, right? Kind of unfortunate. So I hang around on Zysa at the end of the phase. I'm docked at Zysa, and then in the morning they message me back saying, unfortunately, it's not possible for us to get an airship before the turn of the day, because the turn of the day is when you need to have the quartermaster on the ship to get this ability, right? So we can't do this anymore. But you did come all the way over here to do this, so we're gonna give you your payment out of goodwill anyway. And they just sent me 0.4 straight up, which is super appreciated. Thank you, Masks, for that. You will see purchase in inverted commas there. You see purchase in inverted commas here because they didn't actually get anything out of it, but they just sent me the 0.4 out of goodwill, which is, like, it's definitely endeared me a lot more to them, right? I appreciate it a lot. And then they said, okay, and can we hire your quartermaster for the upcoming day? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And they were, we can build a we can build a ship on the next turn, at the start of the turn, which is what they did, why they have this unit here. And they were like, how much would it cost? I said 0.7. I think 0.7 is a little bit cheap because it does give a trade good, and trade goods can be worth more than that. But at the same time, they're the only people with airships on the board. Where's their competition, right? I'm not going to be able to go to someone else and say, will you buy it for a higher price? So I need to price it kind of low just to make sure they accept it. And they said, yes, as long as we can give you that Electrum after we get the trade good. Because that way, we get the trade good, we turn it into Electrum, we give you a bit of the Electrum back, rather than having to spend some of our Electrum that we're planning for stuff today. And I think that's totally fair. So I hopped my Quartermaster on board their ship. And that is where they are now. Unfortunately, of course, the problem with putting a Quartermaster aboard another person's ship is that they can then maroon them. They can do exactly the same thing that I'm doing with this character, except of course they can't put them under arrest, but as long as you're not near a city, any agents on the ship can't jump off again. So if they just maroon this airship in the middle of here, for example, where they're actually going, and away from the cities, far enough away that I can't jump off, they could just keep the Quartermaster for the rest of the game and never pay me again, right? And there would be absolutely nothing I could do about that. So we'll see if they decide to do that or not. My instinct is that they won't, because I don't think the kind of people who would do that would also just send 4 Electrum for 0.4 Electrum for free, right? When they didn't really have to. So we'll see what happens there. As for me, I've started moving back in this direction. I'm considering a few things today, right? For one, there are now airships in the air. Hopefully people can ask me to go and shoot them or something, right? For the record, this airship over here is here because the masks bid on an agent who gives you an airship automatically. This guy, the Masquerade Admiral, he can't get off the airship. He literally is just like the equivalent of my Aeronaut. He controls an airship for the entire game, right? But he comes in with a damaged airship, so you will note that that has engine damage. And if you look at how long it's going to take to reach Zarek here, 9 hours and 10 minutes. Absolutely insane amounts of time. Because the engine damage, I think, cuts its speed in 4, or like to a quarter, I don't really remember. But they are coming to Zarek to get repaired, and I'm going to sell them the Skywrite in order to repair it, which is fantastic. Finally have a use for her as well. We should get some money coming in from that. There's other things I can sell, of course. I've still got my city shot. I've still got my airship shot. I could go and shoot the airship over here. Probably not going to use the airship shot, to be honest. If someone pays me enough, I certainly will, but I don't know that I want to annoy the masks that much at this point. And then I've got my Quartermaster, who is essentially sold. I've got my Navigator. I could potentially sell that to the masks, but they're probably running a bit short on cash with the amount of other stuff that they're buying. I've got my trade good from the Quartermaster, which you'll remember I've been selling to the yellow people, the Museborn, I think it's Museborn, yeah, for 0.9 each turn. I tried to up that price here and see whether they'd still accept. See, 1.1 instead for one trade good. They rejected it, so I'm now shopping around for 1.0 for the trade good, seeing if anyone will accept that, and if not, I'll drop it back down to 0.9 and sell it to the Museborn again. And then of course, I've got the ship support that I can sell to people. The main problem with me trying to make money in this game has been the fact that none of these factions are really fighting each other, right? The only thing that happened in that phase was that the Renegade went and attacked some places, which they've been doing every phase. Well done, Renegade, that's what you're supposed to do. But also the Young Empire attacked Mystara, and that was for a player who was all the way on the other side of the map, right? Masks, it's not someone who's gonna be that annoyed with them, they're just taking territory that they can afford to take. Every single other faction on this map is playing nice with each other, which is insane. No one is fighting. And there are a bunch of little combat things going on, like people keep leading forces into other people's territory, but it's all with agreement to just build the renown of the commanding officers. It's insane. And as a military wildcard, it's infuriating because it means no one is paying for my services on the military front, right? I'm kind of amazed that I managed to get the money that I have already from it. Remember, on the first turn, I had to essentially trick the Museborn into thinking that someone had paid me to attack them in order to get them to pay me to attack somewhere else, right? And even then, they were wanting no responsibility for it. They were going, make sure you make it very clear it's randomized, so that we don't annoy any of our neighbors. In this next phase, I managed to get some money for attacking Mystara, right? Which is good from the Young Empire, but again, none of these big factions that have all of the money right now are really wanting to pay for these military wildcard services. And at the same time, they absolutely are wanting to pay for the economic services, like the Brotherhood Baron, for example, who gives trade goods. The Wanderer trade goods. The Wanderer can go and lend a hand in places and get trade goods for those people, right? The Merchant. I mean, definitely the Merchant. The Merchant is getting plenty of money, right? Even the Renegade is getting paid a fair bit because they keep threatening places and people are paying them for protection. And people have plenty of money to pay them for protection because they're not having to pay other military wildcards to fight other people for them. I think the Spy Master is the main person who's being screwed here. Maybe the Highwayman as well, because no one really needs them when there's no war going on. So I'm losing my mind. I hope these people attack each other soon. We'll see if I can create some tension. I think I probably need to. I might approach someone with the offer of, hey, I'll help you get Kingsland for a much discounted price, right? Try and entice them into attacking it. Because unlike the earlier iterations of this game, Kingsland isn't just useful at the end of the game, it also gives you 2 trade goods every turn, which is fantastic. And potentially 4 trade goods in a turn if you overwork it with your planner. So I think that could tempt someone into attacking something. Outside of that, I don't really have a plan right now. I might just hold this guy hostage. You'll note the amount of Electrum from yesterday to today is rather sad, right? I didn't really get that much more. So, yeah, just hope to change that going forward. Okay, there sure is a lot of strife happening in my Days Without Strife right now. Today has been a super interesting one. So early on, the negotiations were all about the fact that I had the Betrayer trapped on my ship, right? I was trying to get anyone to pay their ransom, and was debating whether it was worth me continuing that, or maybe lowering the price, just so that I didn't have to be constantly avoiding the cities, right? And routing everything around, not letting someone break into the ship and break him out. I eventually got an offer from here, the Masks, for 0.6 Electrum, which is 0.1 less than I was asking for, but they were willing to purchase the Betrayer. Now, I also had an offer for 0.5 from the Museborn. I will go back and see if it's still on here. It is here. So, basically, as long as the Brotherhood were okay to give that Betrayer away for free to whoever freed them, the Museborn agreed that they would pay 0.5 Electrum instead of the 0.7 I was asking. If they'd paid the 0.7 I was asking for, I would have agreed to their offer because it was higher than the Masks, right? But they would only do 0.5. I eventually had a conversation with the Brotherhood saying, hey, would you be willing to give your guy away for free to the Museborn if they do pay this ransom? And the Brotherhood said yes, so I sent them this offer, and they left it hanging. They told me to head to Kingsland with the ship, which I really didn't want to do because there are a lot of agents in Kingsland. They could have broken in and broken him out with someone who has thieves' tools without me, like, actually getting my money out of it, right? So that was still the best offer I had, so I was talking to them, and then the Mask came up to me and said, hey, we'll pay you 0.6, just go to Bearhearth. And that's close enough. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it at this stage. But they had a very specific reason for it. They were like, can you get to Bearhearth in time to get there before the checkpoint so that we can tranquilize the Baron with the Betrayer? And the Baron had been purchased by the Museborn, was about to go into Museborn territory, and I don't know where the Baron is at this point. He's probably still in Bearheart, to be honest, but I'm not going to go and search him out. But the Baron gives you a bunch of trade goods. I think it gives you the number of trade goods equal to the number of Brotherhood bases on the map, which is 3 here, right? So the Museborn will have paid quite highly for that, thinking that they'll get a bunch of trade goods in return. The Masks bought a different Brotherhood agent, and with the permission of the Brotherhood, went and shot the agent that the Brotherhood had sold to the Muse for quite a significant amount, right? And we did get that there in time. It did happen. It was quite funny to see. The Muse were not amused, as you can imagine, right? So that ended the problem of the kidnapping, the like hostage situation I had aboard my ship. I could start actually going around and selling my services. I tried to sell my trade good for 1.1, people wouldn't buy, right? I was about to go back to 0.9 to the Muse, and then I got the same offer from the Masks, 0.9 for the trade good. I may as well build up a bit more of a relationship with them by trading with them rather than just repeating the same trade that I've been doing with the Muse for a while. I don't think the Muse will be that grateful for me doing it, right? Whereas the Masks will probably be a little bit more so. So I sold them that. There was a bit of interesting stuff going on when the Arrows approached me, basically asking me, hey, how much is your cannon shot? I told them 1.3 Electrum. They went silent. Then later on, I found that they'd approached the Masks and asked them how much they would be willing to take a shot for. And the Masks had undercut me massively. They had gone down to, I think, 0.9 or 1.0, something like that. So I approached the Arrows again and went, hey, I can do it for cheaper if I don't get any other offers, right? Don't necessarily just jump over to the Masks without coming back to me to barter. So we had an interesting bit of a back and forth. They wanted a shot on Qantas. At the end of the day, I figured I could probably get more for the shot than they were trying to buy it for, so I ended up throwing it back over to the Masks and letting them deal with it, right? And letting them take the shot. And they did indeed take the shot with this ship as they were going to repair. And I did end up getting paid more for my shot. I got approached by the Museborn again, and they were willing to pay me 1.5 Electrum for the shot and the support on my airship, which is probably too good of a deal. I probably should have upped that a fair bit, but I was just happy to be being paid in a situation where everyone was previously quite friendly with each other, right? Clearly this deal with the Baron getting tranquilized has caused some strife. There was a moment where the Muse were basically demanding that the Masks pay them an amount as like compensation for killing their Baron, and it sounded like the Masks were about to pay it, right? So I got into the ship with the Masks and went, hey guys, don't pay this. They're just trying to extort it out of you so that they can pay me to shoot you. They offered to pay me, they said they didn't have the money quite yet, and then they suddenly went and demanded compensation from you. None of that was true. I just wanted to make sure that these guys don't pay the compensation and stop this war happening, because I really need war to happen in order for me to get paid, right? So I sort of tanked that, and I think it worked. I think they didn't pay the compensation, and that's why Muse is going at them now. Muse then paid me money to go and shoot. Initially they wanted me to shoot Rhymestone, now they're wanting me to shoot Digsite, so that is what I am on my way to do. Once the Masks saw what I was going to do, because I also shot out the air cannons on their airship here so it couldn't shoot me on the way, right? They tried to pay me off. They tried to say, hey, could we pay you not to take this shot? I did consider it, but I don't want to tank my reputation with the Muse completely. At the same time, I do want to keep my reputation with the Masks. I know they'll be a bit annoyed with me at present here, so I'm hoping that the way that I approached it of explaining to them, look, this is just business, you can still buy me, I'm going to give you a slight discount on repairing your airship, as like a sorry for shooting at you. I'm hoping that's good enough. Honestly, I kind of have to do it anyway, right? I'm a war guy. I have to wage war at some point or another, and this is what I've been paid to do. And I think they understand that. I think they're a lot more angry at the Museborn right now than at me. So we'll see how this goes. I will go and shoot dig site, and then from then on, yeah, hopefully a bit more strife and a bit more I can get paid out of it. Okay, so day 3 is done. We're now almost at the end of day 4 even. You can see it's just the 5th train to go, and then we'll be 2 hours until combat. There hasn't been that much of a development since the last one, apart from the kidnapping of the Wanderer at the start of the phase. I think I might insert that after this little bit of explanation here, just so that you have a little bit more context for it, right? But in terms of things that happened at the end of last phase, the only thing that really happened was I got paid by the Masks to provide my support to them, like to give them an alliance, as well as the Muse. So the Muse had already paid me for an alliance at that point, and I sold it to the Masks as well so that they wouldn't be at a disadvantage in that fight. It would be even, right? Then we went into the next phase. My main worry was that they would keep this Quartermaster aboard their ship, so I couldn't sell it, right? However, and they did kind of do that, but they have now offered to pay for it into the next phase. I do have to wait and see whether they actually do. There's not really that much incentive for them to to actually pay up now that they have them trapped on there. But there's nothing I can do about that. I just need to make sure they establish trust. I just need to hope that the trust we've established so far, despite me having shot them a fair bit, was enough. Other things, I tried to sell out my navigator. Didn't really happen. I have hired out my Skywrite to these guys, as long as they can get to Zarek, which is why they're going to pick up the navigator at Bear Hearth. That should increase their speed and hopefully get them there in time. It's going to be cutting it close anyway, but hey. I've also been paid by the Muse, again, 1.5 Electrum to take a shot, which I think is pretty reasonable at this stage of the game. I could have gone out and tried to bid it higher. I didn't do so. I'm saving that kind of play for the final day, and hopefully making it look like if you pay me, I will be more than willing to do whatever for you, right? At that point, I'm locked in. I'm hoping that it looks like that so that on the final day, I can take money payments from absolutely everyone, right? The Highwayman is creating a bunch more routes into Kingsland. Interesting, okay. So the main thing that happened earlier today was the Wanderer kidnapping. I'm going to play the clip from that now, and you'll be able to see what was going on. Okay, I'm not going to explain a whole bunch about what happened before this. I'm just checking in to say what's going on now. But this is the Hurricane. This is my ship, of course. I had docked in Kingsland, and because the forum in Kingsland isn't open yet, the Muses hopped onto my ship to start talking. The Arrows hopped on and then hopped back off again because they were worried I would break them. They only had their Aristocrat, I think, which is a character that I can throw in the brig. And then the Wanderer hopped on. I was like, ooh, interesting. Okay, I can't throw the Wanderer in the brig. He's a player character. But what I can do is move away from Kingsland. So I immediately started moving away from Kingsland, hoping they wouldn't notice, right? And then the... oh, God. And then the Wanderer pointed out and said, kindly stop moving away from Kingsland, please. And I was like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. And he just kept talking with the Muses about how they were going to do the helping hand and stuff like that, right? And during that time, I was moving the Hurricane like a tiny bit every time so that they wouldn't notice it. And I think they did notice it. They just thought they had more time than I did. And I managed to disconnect it so he can't get off now. So we're having a discussion about Museborn paying a ransom to get him off again. I need to get back to that discussion, so stopping this recording now, but I'll get the rest of the of the news to you soon. So as you can see, I managed to get the Wanderer aboard my ship and get them isolated. I was considering, because I think I could have got a lot of money from that, right? If you as the Aeronaut have the Wanderer stuck on your ship, then I think you're very likely to just be able to, like, you could fly the Wanderer to the other side of the map and say, okay, you can only disembark at Jarlsend, for example, get someone to pay you to release the Wanderer at their city so that all the Wanderer can do is help them on that turn, right? And so there was a lot I could do, but I feel like that would have been taking up a lot of my airship's movement for the phase, right? Getting them to wherever they would be. It looks pretty scummy, and it's just not fun for the Wanderer, because that's their only unit they wouldn't be able to play for the phase, right? Which would really suck. So at the end, I just asked the Museborn to pay me for their release. And the Wanderer offered 0.4 to pay. I feel like that's pretty low for what I potentially could have demanded, but I didn't want to price myself too high. So I said, okay, I'll accept 0.4 to release you as long as the Muse buy my trade good for 1.1. And so you can see a very normal trade offer here, 1.5 Electrum for one trade good. That's very much above what you would normally pay for it, but that includes the release of the Wanderer. You will note here, 1.5 Electrum, that's what I've been paid to shoot this city. I'm not being paid for much else at the moment. I mean, I'm going to be paid for the Quartermaster and the Skywrite, probably, to, like, repair the Sentinel. But that's kind of it. Now, I did get approached by the Arrows, asking me how much it would cost for me to call off this attack, right? How much not to get shot. I was wondering, should I even offer that at all? I figured I would offer it and at a very, very high price, 2.5 Electrum, right? Something that is basically impossible for them to pay. And if they do say yes, then I'll take the 2.5 Electrum and won't shoot them, because 2.5 Electrum is incredible for me, right? But if they say no, then I will just fulfill my word and to the Muse and everything will be fine. So, gonna go ahead and shoot them, and now I'm just trying to flog my support to whoever wants to buy it, right? That's the only other thing I can do. Basically sell an alliance with someone, and anyone within this radius of my airship will get that support. We'll see how that goes. Going into the final day, I'm gonna need to make quite a lot of money. 14.4 Electrum right now. It sounds like a lot, but it's not all that close to the winning scores of each game. They tend to be in the upper 30s. And the military wildcards tend to make an absurd amount of money. The winning military wildcards, like the Aeronaut in my faction game that you can find on the channel, they tend to make an absurd amount of money on the final day by selling their services to everyone and anyone at a time that people are really desperate for it. And so I'm going to need to use all my resources very wisely on the final day. You need to bear in mind that, for example, my Skywrite is going to be useless on the final day. There's nothing, there's nothing after the final day to repair it for. My Quartermaster is also going to be useless on the final day, right? Can't sell him. So I've really only got the airship shot, the airship support, the shot, air-to-air shot, so shooting out another airship's, something of another airship's, the airship support, the fighter bay on my airship, right, that gives the +1 support, the city shot on my airship, and then the Aeronaut himself and the navigator himself, right? And I'm gonna need to sell those things for as high of a price as I possibly can. We'll see how much I can get for it. Oh, so the one other thing, I got a message from the Brotherhood today. Interestingly, here, we should make a plan to assassinate the Wanderer on the start of the last turn, because as mentioned in the Discord, 3 nukes is a lot of nukes, lol. So the Wanderer's changed a bit since the last playtest, and I haven't exactly read up on what the precise changes were, but I know that they're extremely strong in the final day. They've been buffed significantly, right? And so Betrayer is saying, okay, all that Electrum is going to go to the Wanderer because people are going to pay him to use his sword. The nuke that they're talking about is a sword that destroys 15 units in a given city. So if he can do that 3 different times on the board, that's so much better than, like, my shot that takes out 7. So what the Brotherhood is suggesting we're doing is I pick up their Betrayer, We go and drop him off at the Wanderer location and just shoot the Wanderer, and then that's Wanderer out of the picture. He won't be able to do anything because he'll be exhausted for the day, and so people won't give him money, and that's more money going to the rest of the wildcards, more money that we can barter with, and suddenly our services look a lot better if they're not being compared to like three attacks of 15 units each, right? That's just not something we can compete with. So I'm very interested in this. I've made a deal with the Brotherhood to get it going, right? And they've asked me, the Betrayer probably ends up in Oxbriar, go and pick him up. And then on the next day, we can just fly him to wherever the Wanderer is, shoot the Wanderer, and hopefully that's it, right? And I'm very in favor of that. My movement in the earlier parts of the day is probably not going to be all that valuable. It's towards the end of the day that people are going to most want to buy my services. So if early on in the day, what I can do is grab the Betrayer and fly him to wherever he needs to be, I'm perfectly happy with that, even if I'm doing it for free. Alright, so that's where we're at. I'm about to shoot Leafburn. In fact, I think I can shoot Leafburn now. No, still not in range. Huh. Okay. I'm gonna have to wait a little bit longer to do that, but I will shoot Leafburn and then just try and flog the support to anyone who's willing to attack Kingsland, right? Or who wants to attack Kingsland. I think I'm gonna direct my ship to go like right here between the three Muse territories, just so that people think. Just so I know that Muse, at least their speaker, is very paranoid at times, right? And if they think they can pay me off for an alliance so that that support isn't used against them, I think that would be incredibly useful. Alright, I need to hop this guy on board. And yeah, we'll see how things pan out this time. Okay, something I missed in the last recording that I really need to cover is the fact that the Musespawn not only caused the Wanderer to get captured that one time in the thing next to Kingsland in my ship, right? Also, almost immediately after, they bought the builder off the Brotherhood, and the builder was on the Hellenic at the time. I pointed this out to the masks and went, look, you got the builder on that ship. Like, you see that, right? And they went, ooh, interesting, and just drove it away from the city enough that it disconnected again. And so the Musespawn managed to get their builder kidnapped on the same turn as they got the Wanderer kidnapped, right? And for that, of course, the masks weren't interested in getting Electrum to let the builder free. They were just like, okay, I'm going to keep him for the whole turn. Screw you, because we're at war, right? So that's exactly what they did. They just kept him on the Hellenic the whole time. The Musespawn were really annoyed, and it meant that the UN in Kingsland didn't open until really late in the phase, because they were planning to garrison it with the builder and get the builder's special ability there, right? The fact that he gives the city its third upgrade for free on a fortification. I don't know if that's the same on the on this kind of city, right? Because this kind of city is a metropolis, and that might be different, but at least the old way that Kingsland worked is if you use that ability on it, it would gain 1 support for all the units there, which is fantastic for them defensively, but they weren't able to do that, of course. So, unfortunate for them. Okay, day 5, dawn of the final day here. You can see checkpoint in 141, that's the very first checkpoint, so the turn ticked over 19 minutes ago. There were a few things that happened at the end of the last phase, the very first of which was I wasn't successful in finding someone to buy my support, right? No one seemed particularly interested. So I was unsure what exactly to do. I of course had this agreement with the Brotherhood that I would go and try and pick up their Betrayer and assassinate the Wanderer over here, right? So I headed down to Oxbriar. I was thinking I kind of need to head down towards Oxbriar. Maybe I can use this to my advantage. So I pointed my airship at this space right here, between the 3 Musespawn cities. At the time, Bearhearth belonged to Musespawn. And then a little bit after that, when they've had time to notice it, right, I sent them a message in Xeric saying, hey, would you like to buy an alliance from me? And then I added in, this is technically breaking the spirit of a deal with another faction, but it's not outright breaking the deal, right? They didn't say exactly that I wasn't allowed to do this. And I've been working with you all game. You've paid me the most this game. I think that will continue into the next phase. I want to keep good relations with you. And what that does, none of it was true, of course. No other faction had made a deal with me to go there, and I wasn't breaking the spirit of any agreement because there was no agreement for the spirit to be broken of. But what it indicated to them was that I'd made a deal with another faction to give them support in that area, and that I was offering the Muse the chance to circumvent that deal by getting their own alliance with me too, which means they would also get the support that I'm giving the other person as well. So it would effectively cancel out, right? And they were super happy with that. I sold it to them very cheap. I think I asked for 0.4, and they actually sent me 0.6 here, saying that thank you for offering that. We feel like it would be too cheap of us to offer you 0.4 here for that. It's super appreciated. It's like, hell yes. Okay, 0.6 isn't a huge amount, but it's something. It gets me there, and I think I've solidified relations a little bit more with them in the process here. So then I got the support. Well, I got myself allied to them. That meant I was supporting the cities around them. They told me, hey, can you stay in range of Kingsland? So we get the support there as well. I say, I'm sorry, it depends on what my agreement with the other faction is exactly. Which, of course, there wasn't one. But I really wanted to go down to Oxbriar to pick up the Betrayer, so I kept heading down this way. And they said, hey, can you at least stay within range of Xeric so we get the support on this side if it's the Ptolemians attacking us? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. I'll stay within range. And I just headed straight on down to Oxbriar, which was what I was planning to do already. So, very happy with that. Then we had the airship repair situation. So the Sentinel, this was something the Sentinel had to redirect to grab the Navigator from Bearhearth in order to get to Xeric in time to be repaired by the Skywright, right? Because the Skywright can only repair at a hangar here. We'd done that. They'd come over here. They'd made it just in time. I'd hopped my Skywright onto the ship to repair the Sentinel. You might notice the Sentinel is not repaired. Those two damage icons mean both of its cannons right now are taken out. So why is it not repaired? Well, I asked for payment in advance. I priced it at 0.7 total. They said, we can't do that right now. We don't have the money for that. I said, well, can you do like 0.4 now and then give me the other 0.3 out of the trade good that you're getting from the Quartermaster? Because you're paying 0.7 out of that trade good for the Quartermaster, the other 0.3, you could just turn it into Electrum and give me the 0.3 as well. Just give me the full amount, yeah. And that seems fine. And they were totally okay with that. They paid me the 0.4. Then Muse came to me and asked, what's the price for shooting that ship in the morning and shooting out its siege cannons? I was like, oh, that would have to be a heavy price, because A, it's using up one of my few resources. It would be using it right at the start of the game, so I wouldn't have a chance to shop around for a higher price. And most importantly of all, it would be shooting out the siege cannons of the Sentinel, which means the only cannon that can shoot that turn, because normal airships can only use one of the two shots, would be the deck guns, the air-to-air shot. And who's in range of that air-to-air shot? Well, that would be me. So I feel like they would just instantly shoot me back and damage my ship. And if they shoot out my city cannon or my support, that's one less thing I can sell on that face, right? So that would be brutal. And then I thought, well, what they're asking me to do is take out the siege cannons. How about I just don't repair the ship? And then the siege cannons are taken out, right? And then everything is good. So I went back to them with the counter-offer. I said, for 1.2 Electrum, I was wondering if I should price it higher. Maybe I should have. I don't know how much money they have is the issue, right? But I said, for 1.2 Electrum, I just won't repair it at all. And then I'll go back to the Masquerade and tell them, look, I was paid more to not repair it. I haven't accepted the payment for it yet. You can say that 0.4 that you gave me is towards the Quartermaster, which has the added benefit, of course, of meaning they can't screw me over as hard on this turn if they don't fulfill their side of the deal, right? Because once I've already done what I was supposed to, they don't have that much incentive to actually give me the money. So if they're still owing me one whole Electrum going into that phase, they could just not give me that and screw me out of a massive amount of money. Now, as is, I've said, okay, the 0.4 that you paid, that is towards the quartermaster cost. That was 0.7. I'll knock 1.1 off it for the inconvenience of me not repairing your ship, right? So you only owe me 0.2 Electrum going into today. And that, of course, means that they can only screw me out of 0.2 Electrum today if they decide to do so. They weren't happy about it. Of course, they really weren't happy about it. But the Museborn offered me that price. There was no way that the mask could compete with that price, so I hopped off the ship. I was straight up with the mask saying, you know, well, this is what I've been paid to do. And that's where we are going into today. Now, I also had a conversation with the Museborn about getting to pick up this betrayer, because something I hadn't noticed is the fact that this betrayer is under arrest. He must have shot at someone in this area at the same time as someone here was watching him. Maybe the marshal was here initially or something, right? And so he actually can't get onto the ship, which kind of ruins the plan of trying to tranquilize the Wanderer. So I had a conversation with the Muse here saying, hey, look, if you let the betrayer free, we will just use him against the Wanderer. We think that's massively in your interest, because if we shoot the Wanderer, that's one less thing you have to worry about on Kingsland. Wanderer is the only character in the game who can fully clear out a fortified city. Remember that a fortified city here, Fort Kingsland, is one of those. These are also fortified. They can't be shot by an airship cannon, which means there is no way to kill those units outside of combat, except for the Wanderer First Blade. Deal damage equal to your renown to the army in your city. He deals 14 damage, and he has multiple charges of this, so he can go into Kingsland, just wipe it completely. And they could bet on being able to outbid the rest of the board on that. They are quite rich, but I think everyone is going to be focused on Kingsland, so other people will be willing to pull their bets. It's better for the Museborn to take out the Wanderer completely early in this phase. And they seem to buy that. They said, hey, most likely we will free him and let him onto the ship. Unfortunately, that was the commander talking, and it seems the commander has now gone offline, and the speaker is now here who didn't make that agreement, and so has not released the betrayer yet. We're really hoping that they release them soon, because we need to get him onto the ship soon in order to get there before the checkpoint goes and the Wanderer gets to somewhere else, right? One last thing here, the Wanderer could have a scanner, which is something that disables enemy spy tech in the area, and the tranquilizer gun counts as spy tech, so you wouldn't be able to use it on the Wanderer if he has a scanner there. Something we discovered earlier in the game is if you're allied to the person with the scanner doesn't disable your spy tech abilities, because it specifically says on it that it disables enemy spy tech. If you ally, you're suddenly able to use your spy tech again, right? And that seems reasonable, of course. You would want your allies to be able to use spy tech, potentially, in the city that you're in. You don't want to be blocking them. But it has the interesting side effect that you can go and shoot your ally, because there's nothing that stops you from using your spy tech against your alliance in this game. Right? So our way around the scanner is potentially allying with the Wanderer. Is that a good idea? Well, I think 90% chance he won't accept an alliance, so it won't work. But there's also a chance he doesn't have the scanner, so we're going to go and try it anyway. And I've tried to camouflage this alliance under the form of Wildcard group hug. Alliance for alliance on this turn, right? Just as a meme thing that we're doing at the end of the game. Maybe that's a bit mean of me, I don't know. But I sent it to all the wildcards. You can see Merchant has an alliance now, Renegade has an alliance, Brotherhood has an alliance with me, right? Spymaster hasn't been online. Highwayman I tried to send an alliance offer, but of course, the Highwayman's allies can actually move over their toll routes for free, and can move multiple spaces if it's all covered by a toll route in a single turn, which is an absolutely incredible ability, and so understandably they don't want to give that to me. So I'm just getting that they hopped on board the ship here very, very briefly to say they're not doing that, right? And then they hopped off in case I arrested their dude. But hey, it doesn't really matter that much anyway. The only point of this is if the Wanderer has access to a forum where the other wildcards are talking about this, it could mean that they accept just thinking that it's a meme thing, and then they can get shot. And the upside of this is if I'm the one allied to the Wanderer, then the Brotherhood needs to give the Betrayer to me, which means I would have control of the Betrayer. I don't necessarily need to go and tranquilize the Wanderer. Or if something goes wrong with the plan, I can just keep the Betrayer and go and sell him to someone else, right? Go and shoot someone else. And I think that could pay quite highly. Wouldn't be as good as removing the Wanderer's abilities, because I think people will pay the Wanderer extremely highly on this turn, but we'll see. Alright, I need to head off now, I think, because I'm having to make a decision. Do I get on board the Sentinel and hope it docks at Kingsland or not? We will see. Oh, the Quartermaster is on there anyway, I don't need to. Alright, but anyway. Alright, that's going to be it for me right now. We'll see how things progress on the final day of this game. Okay, very quick update here. Disappointingly, the plan to shoot the Wanderer did not work. And disappointingly, it would have if we'd been a tiny bit more patient. I didn't know how scanners work, so I thought they disabled all enemy spy tech at the location completely, which meant you just couldn't use it, right? Turns out that's not exactly how it works. The scanner still allows the person to use the spy tech, but it means that it fails to go off. The crucial difference there is that the agent using the spy tech still uses the spy tech, it just doesn't work, which means they do get exhausted for the cooldown period on that. You can see the Betrayer is now exhausted for 5 checkpoints despite not doing anything to the Wanderer. And as I mentioned before, if we'd been allied to the Wanderer when we shot them, we could have been able to get through that defense, right? The scanner wouldn't have disabled the spy tech. I thought it was fine to try it first, see if it didn't work, and then if it didn't work, we wait to see if the alliance happens, right? But as turned out, now we're exhausted, we can't do anything about it, and pretty soon afterwards, the Wanderer did accept my alliance deal. I don't know if that was because he saw that the Betrayer is exhausted and now there's no worry here, but I think he wouldn't have thought an alliance with me would have been a problem because I'm not the person who owns the Betrayer. However, the Brotherhood could have traded the Betrayer over to me and then I could have shot the Wanderer myself, right? And I think that would have worked. We'll never know. Well, I guess if the Wanderer, if you're watching this video, you can confirm whether or not you would have accepted that alliance offer if the Betrayer hadn't already been exhausted. Anyway, the other interesting development here, you may notice, well, you won't notice right now, but you will notice, I no longer have my trade good. Now, you would think I would have sold it for something, and if you were checking my Electrum count, you would be thinking, how the hell did you, like, sell it that cheap? Why would you sell it that cheap? You got basically nothing right now. And the answer is, I didn't really sell the trade good. I traded the trade good. I have got Electrum from a few other sources since. I managed to not extort, but like, on the last turn, the factions tend to go around destroying these bases because they get +1 renown from doing so, right? And they said, is it okay if they destroy Xeric? Of course it's okay, like I'm not using the base beyond this point. But I sent them an inconvenience fee for it, right? And they actually accepted it. So I've done the same for the Young Empire as well. And I think that's because they don't want to alienate me, right? So I'm really happy with that. It's such a small amount, but hey. The Masks also paid me the 0.2 Electrum they owed me, so that's perfect. But that means, where did the Electrum that I got for the trade good go? Well, I didn't get any. Where did I send the trade good? I sent it to the Brotherhood. Why would you send a trade good to your nemesis? That's a really good question. Well, we were on this ship, talking with each other, right? I asked the Brotherhood, hey, can I have your Betrayer for the memes here, right? And they didn't respond, and they were talking elsewhere, so I figured, okay, they figured not. hang on a second, I do have a way to actually buy their betrayer. As a wildcard, you can't offer Electrum to other players, right? The only way you can lose Electrum is running over these highwayman routes. But you can offer trade goods, which means I would be able to go to the Brotherhood and offer them a trade good in exchange for something I wanted from them. And in this case, I really wanted the betrayer. Why do I want the betrayer when they're exhausted and seemingly useless? Well, they're exhausted for 5 checkpoints, as you can see here. There are 5 checkpoints in the day, which may make you think that they're completely useless, but that means after the final checkpoint, they're actually going to be unexhausted and can use their ability again. And I'm unique as a wildcard in also having the airship, which means I can move after the final checkpoint. That means I'll be able to sell that betrayer shot to someone right at the end of the phase. I think that could be absolutely vital, because the betrayer shot is huge, especially right at the end when people know, okay, this is where I need to defend, this is where I might lose a place. If you get someone able to tranquilize someone else's military leader and just take that entire invading army off the table, that's worth a lot of Electrum. Now, I can't leave it too late to make that offer, because people will spend their Electrum elsewhere, of course, right? But I think I can get more Electrum out of that than I could out of the trade good. It's a gamble. It's a real gamble there. But I'm gambling on it. And clearly the Brotherhood were happy with that gamble as well. I don't know if they noticed that they would have the betrayer unexhausted after the final checkpoint. I think that's why they didn't just give him to me for the memes, right? I was trying to get him for free here. That wasn't going to work. But they're clearly happier with the just easy, okay, I'll sell you a trade good for like 1.2 Electrum or something and get that, rather than having to flog their services at the end of the day. I got an extra thrown in. You can see here the deal, Barrister and Betrayer for 1 trade good. The Barrister is this guy over here. He is entirely useless this phase. He's also always entirely useless as a wild card, because he can't use this ability as a wildcard. It can only be used by factions. You can't claim a city. But despite that, there's no neutral city on the board, so his ability just doesn't work. Which is why I figured I could throw him into the deal and they'd probably accept it, right? But the nice thing about him is he's all the way over the other side of the board. That means if anyone sets up a forum over here, I'll be able to talk to them, which is something I can't do at the moment and I've been having severe troubles with, right? These factions up here, I've only really been able to talk to through Telegram. Now, there's one more thing that happened. Here, I got bids on the city shot. And the masks offered me 2 for a city shot at Oxbriar, which is something I'm pretty interested in taking, right? And also said, if I receive a bid from anyone else, let them know and they'll counter bid and bid it up, right? Now, do I think that the masks will have that 2 Electrum to pay me? I'm not 100% sure on that. I think they might be overpromising, because they are also paying the Brotherhood a fair amount for a bunch of different things. Maybe they do, and in that case, I'd be okay to take their deal. But if these guys up here actually do have the 2 Electrum up front, I'd be pretty happy taking that deal. I'm also... this feels so scummy, but I am tempted to just let them accept... They said they'll only accept after Train 2, which is like in quite a while, right? It's in about 2 hours. I don't have these guys moving, right? Yeah. I'm considering whether or not to move that, because if the highwayman sets up that route right now, then I'll lose 0.2 Electrum from this. But they haven't, and it says the checkpoint is imminent, so hopefully that works. Okay, it did work fine. Alright, let's get my agents here onto the airship. I can finally join the UN here, right? But anyway, so that all aside, I am quite tempted to just accept their 2 Electrum and then not take the shot, because on the final day, there's not that much they can do against me if I'm actually allied to someone, right? They could try and denounce, but the main thing that I'm losing is my integrity and their trust, and if they're not planning to buy anything else from me, that's not worth all that much. We'll see as we go. Anyway, so that's basically all the updates. I'll re-update again further on in the phase and see how things have gone. Okay, we're getting in towards the end of day 5 now. I mean, there's still a little while to go, of course. There's the 4th train and then the 5th train and so on. But I guess we're more like midway through, but it feels like it's going towards the end right now. A fair bit has happened here. So I had that offer on the table from the Imperials to take a shot at Rhymestone. They wanted me to include an alliance with Muse in that deal. And in fact, they actually told me to include an alliance with Muse in that deal after they sent the deal and I'd accepted it. Spoiler alert, I accepted their deal for 2 Electrum to go and take a pot shot at Rhymestone. I didn't really want to throw in the alliance with Muse for free, so I went up to Muse and I offered them an alliance for 1 Electrum. And they seemed not particularly happy about paying that. They were very, very reluctant. They didn't send me an offer or anything like that. Maybe they were just holding out until later. Maybe I should have been more patient. But I was getting very worried at that point that people's Electrum supplies are starting to run very low. Several of the people around the board had told me that outright, that their Electrum was very, very low. The masks told me in a forum that they couldn't afford to pay the 0.1 for blowing up my base, right? Which I think was a lie, but I think it came from a place of truth. They didn't really have very much money at all, which was what got me to accept the Imperial offer, because I figured there probably isn't going to be a better one on the table for me to shoot at a city than this. So I start heading off towards Rhymestone, and with regard to that alliance with the Muses, I eventually just send the Muses a request, hey, will you take the alliance for 0.4 Electrum? Because that's still getting me something, right? And I really wanted to make sure I got paid something out of this, and they didn't just decide, we don't need the alliance with him, it'll be fine. So they did accept that offer. And in fact, they also offered to hire the Navigator from me for 0.3, so I managed to get a little bit more out of that situation. Really amusingly as well, the masks couldn't pay that 0.1 for dig site, they said, but they did have an extra capital. And I haven't talked about capital in this because I should never realistically have any as the Aeronaut. It's not useful to me. I have no way to get it apart from being traded it randomly and no reason for people to trade it to me. But it's used for collecting things from cities, and once you've collected everything on the final turn, you've got no more use for it, right? So they went, you know what, instead of the 0.1 Electrum, how about we send you 1 capital, $1? And initially I said no, and eventually I said yes, alright, fine, whatever, you're not going to send me the 0.1, then just do it this way. And really amusingly, at that point I I got into this forum in Fort Leafburn, which was as a result of having hired the barrister from the Brotherhood, right? And the arrows at that point were going around desperately to people, suddenly going, hey, does anyone have any capital? Because we can't collect our last thing, right? They were trying to see if they could buy some off the merchant. Merchant hadn't produced any because no one really needs that much on the last turn, right? They went to a bunch of other factions, they'd all spent theirs. I was the only person with capital, so they paid me 0.3 Electrum for that 1 capital. So I got something out of it, right? And then I went back to masks a bit later, once I had been paid to take out Rhymestone, and basically went, hey, since we've had this relationship up to this point, I'm willing to give you a way to buy yourself out of being shot right now. They were aware that I was going to shoot them. We'll talk about why that is in a second. But hey, and they asked which city is being shot. And I said, I don't think I can tell you that, sorry. They said, how about if we pay you the 0.1 Electrum that you were demanding earlier? How about that? And then you tell us. And I said, sure. So I got the 0.1 out of that, and I got the credit that I managed to swap for 0.3. So getting little bits like that, it's probably not going to be a winning score, but it's good to get a little bit out of it, right? I priced myself at 1.5 for stopping the attack on Rhymestone, purely because I know these guys don't have enough money to match the 2, and I'd already gotten the 2 off the others, so they couldn't really take that back. There is a way for them to take it back, we'll get to that in a moment, but But most likely they can't take it back. So I did offer them the way to pay their way out of it, and was just going to accept the wrath of the Imperials if I did that. But unfortunately they decided not to pay the 1.5. Later on they told me they just didn't have the money to pay it in the first place, but they had been telling me that they could have. I think they decided to pay the Wanderer with that money instead, which is fair. I can only delete 7 units, Wanderer can delete 15. So I eventually took the shot at Rhymestone, which is why it's down to 3 units now. And then the Wanderer attacked Bearhearth anyway, so these guys got really annoyed with him, because they had paid him like 3 Electrum to not do that, and then he did it anyway. And this is where the fun character called the Enforcer comes in. So here, this is a follower who, at the end of each round as the factions, you are able to bid on agents. And one of the agents that comes up at the special round at the end of the game, the special bid, which happens on the 5th day, is the Enforcer, a military follower who's placed their services up for bid. At the end of the game, rescinds all Electrum paid on the final turn to any wildcard that is not allied to their faction. That's enormous, right? Now, the other agents who are up for bid on the final day are really powerful, and this one doesn't actually do anything for you yourself as a faction, right? Getting that Electrum back, not useful in the slightest, but if you're really irritated with someone and you've got no chance of winning the game, you can pay, you can basically throw your game away to grab this guy and go screw you to that player. And it seems like they're going to do that to the Wanderer, which is good for me because it means the Wanderer's probably not going to win the game. So that's what ended up happening with the Wanderer. That's all kind of an aside. The reason that the Masks knew I was going for Rhymestone or one of their cities in the first place is because I shot out the guns of the Sentinel. I saw the Sentinel approaching my ship and was like, hang on, is that going to shoot my ship before I can get there? And then I don't have anything to sell, right? I'm really paranoid about that. So I quickly went in and did a strike and took out its guns. And I was, not that one, that one. And I was so proud of this. I was like, I got in there first. I've gotten the Hurricane, I've gotten the Hellenic out of the picture. It's fantastic. And then I looked over here, and then they pointed out, we already shot this turn. We couldn't have shot you. That was so dumb of you, because we wanted to hire you to go and shoot the Zenith. I was like, oh no. That was such a big mistake. That's taking out one of my valuable resources that I can sell on the final turn, right? I kind of screwed myself on that one. But they got the heads up that I was going for them because I shot them. That's not something you tend to do if you're not going for someone. So that was the point at which we started discussing whether or not I'd go for Rhymestone. And of course, eventually I did. I took a shot at it. That's where that's been. I also ended up kidnapping a bunch of speakers and stuff in the process who had got onto my ship to talk, and then we disembarked from Kingsland. But that's not something I can ransom because on the final turn they're not actually all that useful. Alright, so that leaves us where we are right now, which is I've got, well, it doesn't quite. I've got one resource left to me, really. Well, I've got the mobilization, so the fact that I can get people from one place to another in my airship, but the Highwayman seems to have that on lock. Highwayman lets you move 2 at a checkpoint instead of 1 if you're allied to him, and that's just much faster than my airship can get anyone to anywhere. Plus, it doesn't have the potential downside of me kidnapping them. So no one's been coming to me for that. Right? The only thing I have left is my good old tranquilizer that I bought from the Brotherhood for that trade good. I'm really betting on this being worth more than a trade good, right? However, as of that point, I hadn't received any particular bids. I tried shopping it around. I basically approached everyone in the game to ask them if they wanted it, which is inadvisable because it means everyone is prepared for it to happen, right? And this kind of needs to be a secret thing so they can't buy protection against that attack. But I did eventually get one offer for it, which was that the Imperials were willing to pay me 1 Electrum to go and tranquilize the I can't even remember what they're called, Ptolemaean commander over here. And that's the only offer I've got, so I guess I'm going with it, right? These guys over here also offered to pay me 0.5 to attack the Wanderer, because they don't like the Wanderer very much. I did try and do that. I tried to path towards Aeronaut to see if I could go and intercept it. But of course, my guy doesn't come off cooldown until the last checkpoint of the game. And the Wanderer is probably going to have done everything he's going to do by that point. So there wasn't very much I could do with that, really. It did make the arrows break their alliance with me. You'll note I'm allied with everyone. I sent everyone alliances at some point just because I want to be protected against that Enforcer retribution. And also, it looks good. But they did break it so that they wouldn't be vulnerable to tranquilizing if I did drop someone off there. And they had that blocking thing that I've forgotten the name of. Anyway, I've got that one offer of 1, and I technically have the offer of 0.5 from these guys, but it's probably not a real offer. What I've done with that is I've gone to Muse, who I know are reasonably paranoid, right? And told them, hey, I've got 2 competing offers, which isn't untrue. I told them they're both for 1 Electrum. That is untrue, only one of them is for 1 Electrum. I told them you'll really like one of them, and you'll probably really dislike the other one. And they asked me to expand on that, and I eventually did. I told them what I'd been asked to do by the Imperials, go to here, and I told them the other one involved something anti-them. And I said, if you want to lock in the one that goes against this one, you can add to the Imperial bid to make that one better. And that's something they're considering at the moment, and we'll see whether they accept it. They seemed inclined to at the time, and I think it might just work out. Also, the Wanderer got carried over here to do his sword attack, and the arrows had someone in here with the tranquilizer, so they jumped on the ship and killed him. So these guys don't need to pay the Wanderer anymore. Hopefully they can have a little bit more money to put towards my Betrayer. If I can get at least 2 Electrum out of it, I'll be pretty happy with the trade good trade that I made earlier in the game. I still don't think it's going to carry me over the line. The winning scores, like this would have been a 2nd place score in the last game I recorded a video for. But in this one, well, since then, the meta of this game has evolved, and I think people have realized just how important Electrum can be. And the winning scores in these modern ones are so high, it's like 36 and stuff like that. A 20 score is often the 2nd worst or something like that. So I'm trying to finish as high as I can, but I don't have great hopes. I'm going to have to make quite a lot of money out of this Betrayer to actually get anywhere. We'll see how things go. Alright, there's not all that much to update. We're just before the 5th train here, and of course my Betrayer will unexhaust very soon. I had that offer for 1 Electrum from the Imperials for him. I went over to the Muse and asked them, hey, would you be willing to add 1 to that offer to stop it attacking you? And they were generally in favor, but they didn't actually offer anything. And then, after a little bit, the Imperials cancelled this. As you can see, I sent them a message telling them exactly what was going on so that they knew why it was being delayed. But they did just straight up cancel it. At which point I started panicking a little and going, am I actually going to get paid for this? This could be a problem, right? Oh god. Because at that point, if the Imperials have cancelled their offer, maybe these guys don't see it as being worth all that much. Maybe my bluff falls apart, right? They think no one has the money to be paying people to attack us. Maybe I just don't get paid at all. And I was very worried about that until I suddenly received this. Buy Trank 2 Land Kingsland. And I immediately, probably too fast, jumped at this and sent them the trade offer of 2 Electrum. Realistically, if I had a competing offer, I would have, of course, gone back to that competing offer and went, can you beat 2 Electrum? I didn't, so that was why I immediately submitted this, but I should have left it maybe a little bit longer than I actually did. They then refused to actually complete the trade until I got back to Kingsland, which made me incredibly worried that they were just going to do something like jump aboard my ship and tranquilize the Betrayer so that he can't do anything to them, which would be a much cheaper way of taking it out of the picture, right? So I talked to them a bunch in the Quasar, probably an annoying amount. I should have been a little more trusting of them, right? But they went, it's fine, we'll pay you when we get there, and there was nothing I could do, so I just had to go there and hope And I got off my ship and waited a bit, and they did indeed accept the trade, as you can see here. So I've obtained my 2 Electrum. Now, as part of this, they want me to ship the Betrayer to wherever he needs to go at the final checkpoint. They said there are 3 places that could potentially be useful to them, and that's part of the service that I've been hired for, so I will go ahead and do it. I could go back on my word and do something else now, because, you know, I could, but I don't think I'm actually going to get any offers from anyone on doing anything else, and it feels a bit mean to screw over the Muse after they've actually just paid me a certain amount. What I might do that feels a bit less mean is go and do what they asked me to do, and at the same time ask them, hey, if you've got any spare Electrum at all, I'd really appreciate it if you can give it to me. No obligation, I'm still going to do exactly what you told me to, but if at the end of the phase, you know, you've done everything you need to do, there's Electrum left, if you could send it to me, it would be so appreciated. That could get me back in contention, right? And realistically, it's not. Realistically, I think I'm too far behind. But, you know, maybe it will. Maybe they'll have like 10 Electrum left over, who knows? And maybe they haven't, like, made a strong enough bond with another wildcard that they'd send it to that wildcard. There's not all that many things on the table this late in the phase from wildcards, so it is possible that they run out of things to buy with their Electrum. But we'll see when we get there. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at. I've really enjoyed this game. I've found the Aeronaut to be a lot more relaxing than I thought it would be. There's obviously still plenty of negotiation and stuff, but just the fact that you're only controlling these 4 characters, and they tend to like, well, unless you've done what I did and buy the Betrayer and the Barrister, which realistically no one else is ever going to do, right? Your characters sort of tend to stay in the same place, or like the same 2 places if you sell them off to another airship, and so you don't have to be focusing on all that much. You're trying to sell your services, but you've got like 4 or 5 discrete things that you want to sell in a turn, and you don't necessarily need to go much further than that. Now, of course, I did go a little bit further than that. I bluffed quite a lot to get paid the amount that I got paid on certain turns, especially when no one was offering me anything. But I think you could get away with playing this character without doing that. It's been a blast, a real blast to play as well. I've just enjoyed it. We will see how things turn out at the end. I actually have no idea which wildcard is leading. I suspect that the Museborn or the Imperials will win out. Although, I don't know, the Arrows have done really well too. And they do still have a lot of units here. Stopping that Wanderer coming in and killing them was huge. But I suspect that my Betrayer is going to end up being used against the Arrows here. So that's going to take out one of their armies, potentially. Yeah, alright, well, I don't know who's going to win there. Wildcards, I have literally no idea. I thought it could be the Wanderer, but the Wanderer getting exhausted on this last turn was huge. It stopped a lot of bad things from happening to some factions, and it made sure that the Wanderer wasn't getting paid that huge amount. The only thing I am a little bit worried about is that the Muse will feel so bad for the Wanderer, because they were the one who ordered the Wanderer there and basically took him out of the game, right? Once he gets exhausted, he can't do anything for the rest of the phase. I'm a bit worried that the Muse will feel so bad for him that they'll send their extra Electrum there instead of to me. But hey, maybe they have no extra Electrum. We'll see. Realistically, the people who are in strong contention, I think the Renegade is less in contention than I thought they were originally. I think they got paid less for its stuff than I thought they did. But certainly the Merchant's been paid a ton during the game, the Brotherhood has been paid a ton during the game, and I think, surprisingly, the Highwayman has been paid a fair amount during the game. I don't know how high they priced their services, is the only thing there. If they managed to get a lot of alliances through the game on the basis that if you're allied with the Highwayman, you can move across 2 of these at once, which is huge. Mobility is incredible in this game, right? I don't know how high they price their alliances at. If they price them reasonably high, they could easily be at the 30 point at this point, I think. But it's a question of, would they have been able to sell that to factions? I don't know. We'll see. I'm very much looking forward to it, and well played to everyone else here. Alright, well, 30 minutes to go, well, a little bit over, and you will see I'm now on 22.2 total, so most of that came from the Betrayer being sold to the Muse, and after that they also asked me if I'd be willing to support Kingsland. I said I was really hoping to sell the support to someone, but obviously I wasn't able to because I needed to move the Betrayer somewhere, so would they be able to throw me a bone or anything and throw me a little bit of Electrum? And they said they could do 0.2, which is like, it's nothing, but it makes my number a little bit more satisfying, right? 22.2. And like, every bit of Electrum could move me a place up, you never know. So I went ahead and took it. They had me targeting Qantas to get the commander, so I was on the way there. But a bit later, they changed their mind and told me to go to Fort whatever this one's called. Fort Aridias instead, and tranquilize the Arrow commander. Which I thought, well, I mean, the Arrows are a bit more online, and they probably would be a little bit annoyed with me for this, but I mean, they didn't buy the tranquilizer, right? I don't really have any kind of agreement with them. The only thing that I've done with them this entire phase is sell them that one capital earlier for 0.3 Electrum. Unfortunately, the Arrows have thrown the toys out of the pram and decided that, I mean, it's kind of fair because it's their only form of leverage at this point, but they have gone all in on threatening Enforcer. So I think I showed you this earlier. Enforcer is a character they can buy on the final turn, and if they buy it, anyone not allied to them will lose all the Electrum that they gave them that turn, right? So Arrows, I'm fairly sure, are buying the Enforcer regardless. They want to punish the Wanderer, the same as these guys do, actually. They want to punish, so they're buying the Enforcer anyway, so it's something they can threaten, right? You shoot our commander and we'll remove that 0.3 Electrum from you. I was like, well, can you offer anything more than that? Like, I don't really want to break my word. Well, initially I went ahead and went, I'm being incredibly honest this game. I have stuck to my guns on absolutely everything. You guys know that's not exactly true. I have actually stuck to every deal I accepted payment for, except that one 0.4 payment for repairing the Quasar, was it? Or the Zenith, one of these. Oh no, it was the Hellenic, sorry, this one here. No, it was the Sentinel. That 0.4 Electrum I got from Masquerade for repairing the Sentinel here. In Xeric when I hopped off the ship because I got paid more, but I gave them that as a discount against their other purchase on that turn, the Quartermaster, so it ended up not costing them anything. I've not played a very I've not played an incredibly honest game, right? A lot of what I got was through bluffing, a lot of what I got was through kind of dirty tricks, but at the same time, I've never broken a deal, and a lot of that was due to the fact that I was hoping to get a bunch from breaking deals in this final turn, but those opportunities haven't really arisen. There's only really been one person vying for like my services on each thing, so as far as the other players can see, I've been a pretty great person, and I've been hammering that point with everyone, especially with Muse. I've been going, look, I've kept to everything I said. I've been trying to act all innocent and hey, I'm a great ally. I've been your friend all game kind of thing, to see if they might throw me Electrum. But I'm fairly sure they just decided to throw it to the Wanderer anyway because the Wanderer got screwed over by their plan, and the other factions I just didn't have good enough relations with to get their the money. I shot the Masks, of course. These guys haven't really been online. The Imperials I barely ever talked to, and the Arrows I have talked to a little bit, but again, not really much. The Imperials threw all their extra Electrum to the Merchant at the end and did that publicly in Kingsland. And so anyway, all of this aside, I went ahead and said that I don't really want to go back on my word. That I've kept my word with everyone so far that I've made a deal with, so I would not like to do that. But it's the final bit. If you can scrape together some Electrum to pay me, then I might consider it, because everyone all the wildcards have to consider payments, right? But if you can't pay me, then I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to screw someone over who actually paid me in favor of someone who's just threatening me. That's not going to work. And so the Imperials hopped on, and they really want the Arrows to keep this commander for whatever reason. I suspect that they've judged that it makes their chances of winning better. And so they came on, tried to convince me. They said that they essentially paid for me and sent 1.4 Electrum to the Muse, who then gave me the 2 Electrum. Muse dispute that. I went and asked them afterwards. They said they gave me the full 0.2 and never received anything from the Imperials. I don't know who to believe on that front. I don't think it matters very much. I guess we'll find out in the post-game who was actually telling the truth there. But there was a thing that the Imperials did after that made me think it's definitely the Imperials lying here, which was that I said, hey, if ultimately it doesn't really matter who's telling the truth here, because they were trying to convince me that they were telling the truth. The main thing that matters is I need some Electrum if I'm going to accept this offer, because it's just wrong for me to do it for nothing, right? And they went and said, okay, I'll see if I can find that Electrum for you. And they left for like 15 minutes, and bear in mind, earlier in this phase, like about maybe an hour earlier, they'd said in Kingsland, hey Merchant, do you want the rest of our Electrum? And Merchant said yes. They did this publicly. He just went away and said, I'll try and find that Electrum for you. And then he came back like 5 minutes later saying, hey, I'm really sorry, I don't see any way that we can get you that Electrum. I tried everything. This is so performative, man. You knew you didn't have any Electrum to pay me. You purely did that to, like, put on a show to the Arrows, I think, that you're being their friend. So I just went ahead and said, you know, I can't accept that. I'm really sorry. And the Arrows went, okay, screw you. We are buying the Enforcer. We are not allying you. You are getting your Electrum revoked. And like, it's 0.3 Electrum. It's whatever. I go down to 21.9, but it still feels really bad, right? Because I don't think I did anything wrong. I actually offered the Arrows the chance to buy that Trank, like, well before anyone else. 11 o'clock this morning, I hadn't even mentioned it to anyone else before I sent this. And then I had a full discussion with them in Leafburn a little bit later than that, talking about how the Tranquilizer was on board my ship and I was hoping to sell it at the end. And they went, you know, we'll consider it. And then they threw all their money at the Wanderer, trying to get the Wanderer not to attack them. And then the Wanderer attacked them anyway. So how is that my fault that they chose to spend it on something else? Then I got bought by someone else, right? And now they're going, screw you, why aren't you doing what we tell you to without us paying you anything at all? I think if the shoes were on the other foot, if they were in the Muse position and had paid me too, and they found out that I caved and didn't shoot someone because I was threatened that 0.3 Electrum would be removed from my account out of spite, I think they would be infuriated with me for that. So I think it's just that they're in a pretty rough spot, honestly. Without this commander, they're probably... Well, they seem to be under the impression that they're going to lose to the Masks in some way, which I do not see how they manage that. They've only got 3 units here, right? But they're trying to make out to the Muse that, hey, we didn't intend to attack you at all, Mr. Muse. And so they're clearly getting frustrated because they're trying to ally the Muses. The Muses have set me on them, and they can't understand why the Muse won't accept their, like, oh, look, we're friendly. I think I can see why the Muse aren't accepting the, oh, we're friendly thing. But if they're telling the truth, which I think they are, they come across as quite honest in these conversations. They are just going, screw you, it's like, I'm going to take this out on you because you're the guy being paid to do the dirty work, right? It's interesting, the whole spite mechanics in this game. I like the spike mechanic, the enforcer thing, in a sense, because it forces the wildcards to always be thinking, these guys can screw me over at the end, maybe I shouldn't screw them so much. And the opportunity cost of buying the enforcer is huge. You can't buy the enforcer if you're looking to win the game, so it's only really an option for a faction that's been screwed over so badly that they can't win the game anymore. But you still run into the thing that happens under any spike mechanic, which is that anyone can use it, regardless of whether they actually can win the game or not, right? They could just go for that as a screw you if they think they can't, but actually, or if they just value screwing someone over as much as possible. And when you're in an emotional state, which can definitely happen in negotiation games, it's the kind of game where it happens the most, right? That spike becomes quite an appealing option if you feel like you've been screwed. And of course it feels bad to the people on the other side, such as me in this case. But hey, that's way too much discussion about something that's only going to affect 0.3 Electrum. I'm so glad I didn't have any other interactions with the arrows. I had so many opportunities, right? They offered to buy my shot much earlier. They offered to buy my navigator for 0.4 Electrum. Never paid for that. And in fact, I got like halfway there and then they said, and no, we're calling that off. We're not doing that anymore. And thankfully, the Muses wanted to buy my navigator at that point. Here... Oh god, I can't remember what this was. Oh, this was yesterday. They asked what they would need to pay in order to not get shot, and I offered them 2.5. But yeah, anyway, I offered the tranquilizer, they didn't take it. I talked to them in Fort Leafburn a bunch after I got the barrister here. I thought it would be useful. It's been basically useless. I got me the 0.3 from the dollar, so eh. Okay, so one more thing has come up now. The Imperials just envoyed this guy into here, which means that he's got a scanner on him, supposedly, which will stop the commander being tranquilized. Now, again, the scanners work against enemy units. They don't work against allied units. And note, the Young Empire has an alliance with me here. And they'll be able to very blatantly see that they have an alliance with me. I don't know whether this is an oversight or whether this is them wanting the people adjacent to them to be crippled and being able to throw their hands up and go, it wasn't my fault that you guys got shot. I just hadn't noticed a specific game mechanic / interaction. Or maybe it is a genuine mistake. We won't know. I wonder if they'll cancel it when I get closer. We'll see. I do have a choice here in that I could give them a heads up. I could very easily give them a heads up and say, hey, Imperials, that's very smart, but you need to cancel this alliance. I don't really want to shoot this faction either. I'm just doing it because I paid, and this gives me an excuse to get out of that and maybe get the arrows not to use that enforcer on me, right? But the way the arrows have been talking, I have a feeling that they would use the enforcer on me anyway at this stage, so I don't really have a great incentive to do that. And again, that screws over the Muse, who paid me to do this, and I don't really... like, it's not from a gameplay point of view, but I don't want to screw over the Muse when it feels very much like the arrows are being the people who I would prefer not to reward for this behavior. Let's just put it that way. Whatever the case, it's been a really fun game as the Aeronaut, and certainly not a game without strife, but at least the strife has been fun. We'll see what the final scores are soon, I guess. Okay, well, that was a fun little interaction. So the Imperial Envoy had travelled here, and of course said he had a scanner. He stayed allied with me, and I was considering telling him that he needed to cancel that alliance so that I could get out of shooting. But hey, I ended up not doing that. So we got to Fort Auridas, and I hopped out, and they hopped their units into the hurricane, right? And then I hopped in to try and shoot them, they hop out again. They're using my own techniques from the video against me. How dare you? Anyway, thankfully I'm in control of the airship in that situation, which gives me the advantage because I just sent the airship slightly away. And because the airship had only just arrived there, if they had stayed in there a moment longer, their commander and their marshal would have been out of the picture. They would have just been taken away and would be unable to go back into Fort Aridias. So they jumped off and they stayed in the city that time, and I managed to shoot the commander. Turns out there was never any scanner. The Imperials were just lying about that fact to try and get me not to take the shot and to use it somewhere more useful. I certainly fell for it. I think the Muse also fell for it, right? It was pretty convincing, but yeah, it wasn't the truth. And the Imperials have mentioned now that was the case. Now, myself and the Imperial leader are flying off to Skies Without Strife, is what we're calling it, somewhere away from this board. And the other interesting thing that's happened in the meantime, obviously I am going to get Enforced. And in fact, the arrows seem to be threatening every wildcard at the moment. They said, hey, wildcards, I'm sorry, but we're going to get the Enforcer by default. It sounds like maybe they weren't as salty at me as I thought they were. It might just be that they're not going to win their bid and they get automatically assigned to the Enforcer either way, right? There is like an order of the bidding characters. We can't see them here. But if you lose your bid automatically goes to the first one in the list, and that is the Enforcer apparently in this case. So they were automatically going to the Enforcer, and really all they're doing is refusing to give me an alliance to negate that Enforcer effect. And that's completely fair, right? It's up to them who they give that alliance to, and it's not like they're going out of their way to spite the wildcards here. They're just getting put on it by default. It's a bit of a different situation than I was making out. In fact, I might cut some of the commentary leading up to this, because I think I was talking about them... Like, I was talking about things like spite in negotiation games where it probably doesn't apply here, and that might give the wrong impression of how these players are playing the game. I think they've played an amazing game thus far, to be honest. Now, the other interesting thing that's happening right now, well, the other interesting thing that came up in chat here with the Museborn was they talked to me about that trade good that I sold the Brotherhood way earlier, and said, hey, are you feeling good about the difference you made? Well, about what you did with the trade good? I was like, yeah, I guess so. I think I wouldn't have even gotten the 0.3 from the arrows in the first place if I didn't sell that trade good, so that's kind of net neutral, the fact that they gave me 0.3 and are now revoking it again. That's whatever. I needed this barrister in that forum to negotiate that with them in the first place. But that aside, I sold my guy here for, well, the Betrayer for 2 Electrum, and they mentioned that they were the people who bought the Brotherhood's trade good, and they bought it for 0.9 Electrum. So that is a plus 1.1 Electrum on that. I'm pretty happy with that. Would I have sold it for 0.9? No. No way! You don't sell things for 0.9 on the final day! What, are you crazy? Okay, I know I did sell the Quartermaster for quite low on the final day, but that's not really on the final day. That was the day before. The trade goods on the final day are so valuable. They won't go above like 2 Electrum, I'm sure, but each faction getting it out of the hands of a different faction is valuable enough that it can go above its base price, which is 1 Electrum, in my opinion anyway. I think people could easily have gotten 1.2, 1.3 from a trade good at this point, but it still wouldn't have been as much as I got for the Betrayer on the Hurricane, so pretty happy with that. Combat will be in 1 minute. We will see the final state of this board. Yeah, this is an interesting little conversation here. They're doing this right up to the deadline. Highwayman got paid to break his alliances with everyone except Muse, I think. And I don't know if he actually wants to do that, because then he gets hit by the Enforcer. He's probably one of the few wildcards that's immune to this Enforcer threat from the arrows. So we'll see what he decides to do there. Oh, okay. Ooh, it went through. All right, so Museborn. Okay, the arrows did attack the Muse. That's interesting. I wonder whether they would have. They, yeah, they probably should have bought my support, right? I haven't lost the money on the final day, so I guess they didn't buy the Enforcer. I don't know what they did buy. Curious. Alright, well, I'll have to figure out what on earth went on with that after the game. But this is the final board state. We can see the renown count. Masquerade have 68, Museborn have 70. They just pipped them. And Young Empire on 60, so a bit behind. Ptolemy on 62. Arrows of Artemis actually went down significantly that turn. Interestingly enough, there wasn't any war on this side. I guess these two were rock solid aligned, but losing Fort Jarlsend would have been huge. Yeah, 9 renown lost there, so that was probably it. I wonder if that was due to the commander being tranquilized. It's very possible. And if that was the case, Arrows were actually correct that the Muse almost made themselves lose by tranquilizing that, because if these guys had managed to protect Fort Jarlsand with that, the Masquerade would have been significantly lower, right? Would have been 9 lower, and the Arrows would have been 9 higher, and they're both significantly behind this. But the Muse won out anyway, and I think it's a well-deserved victory. They managed to hang on to Fort Kingsland for the entire game. That is utterly insane. I have no idea how they managed to do that. Crazy. And taking Dig Site was also the difference, right? Because it comes out of the people who were going to win otherwise. Beautiful. Well done to them. Okay, so here are the final Electrum scores as I got at the end of the game here. You can see that in first place among the wildcard is actually the Brotherhood. Second place is the Merchant, and I'm down there in third. There's quite a large gap between me and the 2 players ahead of me. As I mentioned in the video, people have gotten very good at this. The winning wildcard scores for Electrum are really quite high now. You have to do very, very well there. Brotherhood and Merchant absolutely knocked it out of the park. I think both of them managed to pocket one faction in particular. The Masks and the Brotherhood worked really closely together throughout a lot of the game, and I think a lot of the Electrum that the Masks got just went directly to the Brotherhood. They were very happy to pay large amounts of money for that. And on top of that, the Brotherhood were still selling outside of that, outside of the Masks as well. You saw that at one point in the game, they sold the Baron for a massive sum of money to the Muse, and then sold their Betrayer to the Masks to go and shoot the Baron that they just sold. It's plays like that that get you ahead, right? And the Merchant, I think Merchant is less of a dramatic wildcard than that one. He can't go out and sell someone to shoot someone, right? But he can just sit there and generate the right kind of goods and sell them to the right people at the right time. I think he had the Imperials pocketed. He was working very, very closely with them throughout the game. And of course, I didn't do a lot of trading with the Imperials. I think a lot of the other wildcards didn't do that much trading with the Imperials. So the Merchant had the majority of their money coming in, but again, was seeking deals elsewhere and getting Electrum where he could outside of his pocketed faction as well. So worked out really well for those two. Brotherhood ended up pipping Merchant by 0.9, which is the amount of Electrum they sold that trade good that I gave them for. Which is incredible, right? It might have been my trade good that made the difference there. It's possible they would have found another source of income if I hadn't done that, because they would have still had the Betrayer, right? They would have still had the Barrister. Maybe they find a way to sell the Barrister for 0.1 to a faction who needs to talk to someone in a forum over there. Maybe they realize that the Betrayer is going to be available on checkpoint 5, and they stick him in an important city like Kingsland, right? And to manage to sell that Betrayer shot. It wouldn't have been as easy for them as it was for me, because they wouldn't be able to move him after checkpoint 5, but it would have been feasible to at least get some money out of it. So I think they had the win locked up either way, but it is quite amusing that it was the value of my trade good that they won by. As we go down the table, Highwayman managed to do very, very well as well, only one Electrum behind me, and honestly it was close with the other active wildcards. You'll notice DNF from the Spymaster, they basically never played in this game, unfortunately they dropped out. But the other wildcards were all very close together, the Wanderer 19.4, the Renegade 19.7, and then, you know, up to the Highwayman at 21.2, and then myself at 22.2. If the Wanderer had not got tranquilized on that last turn, I think they would have made significantly more than that, so I'm quite glad that they got knocked back a bit so that they didn't get a podium finish. But I do think that the Muse sent them some, like, consolation money after that to make up for it just a little bit. So they did steal my potential consolation money that way. I was really hoping that the Muse might send me something extra at the end. Sadly, did not happen. I'm still pretty happy with this result, to be honest. Considering that there were no other airships on the board for such a long time, and when they did come out, they only came out of that one faction, right? The masks. So I really couldn't sell my agent abilities for very high, because there was no competition. I couldn't go to someone else and have them bid it up, right? I think I did well with that in consideration. I could definitely have done better if I was a bit more duplicitous in earlier phases, instead of trying to make myself look as honest as possible going into the last one, and then completely failing to take advantage of that, right? Getting basically no opportunities where I could act deceptively in order to get more money, right? There's, So trying to make myself look that honest and nice didn't actually help in the slightest, and it didn't even help in the fact of getting me that consolation money that people send at the end that sometimes that sometimes is crucial in this game, because they felt worse for the Wanderer, the faction that I was sort of working closely with. So definitely some things I could have done better, but overall I'm really happy with this, and I had a ton of fun as the Aeronaut. It's awesome to just be a character who can just move around, right, and do whatever, and the kidnappings in particular were just hilarious to me. I loved that strategy, even though I don't think it was incredibly productive. I think it made people scared to get on my airship, which probably meant people were less willing to pay me to, like, move them to places. In my experience, people don't pay the Aeronaut that much for doing that anyway, but it would have been a little bit extra, right? And I think in some situations it could have been crucial, like if someone needed to get a commander to the front line. People just didn't even consider that because they didn't want their commander to get kidnapped and ransomed. But man, it was fun. Alright, this has been Days Without Strife. I'll see you next time.